Bleach. Studying medicine can't save the spirit world. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyright or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 726 Working Day and Night. That night, Senju Cheng fulfilled the vows he had made secretly. Once, when Unohana stabbed his throat with a blade, he vowed to take revenge in a similar way. Once, when Unohana stacked his body with his zanpakutō countless times, he was determined to penetrate Unohana's body. Once, when Unohana was impressed by his kido and kendo again and again, he kept growing the hope that Unohana would be conquered by him sooner or later. Fight continuously. And he was constantly healed by kido, and continued to fight. That night, Unohana bloomed in a different manner. The next day, Unohana, the captain general who was admired by countless Shinigami and worked diligently to maintain the stability of the 13th Division after taking office, seemed to be unwell. Therefore, many matters that should have been handled by Unohana Captain General were handled by Vice Captain Senju on his behalf. When many Shinigami who came to the 1st Division to report or discuss official business asked Senju simply answered that Captain Unohana has a new understanding of fighting, so he is practicing in seclusion. The Shinigami did not think much about this. After all, whether it is for a kendo master of the level of Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni or Unohana, it is normal to have some insights and practice in seclusion. In other words, in the eyes of countless Shinigami, if the respected Captain Unohana has some insights, it is a great thing for the entire 13th Division. However, Captain Unohana's seclusion lasted for 3 full days. Moreover, every night, the top floor of the entire 13th Division's dormitory is brightly lit until dawn. For a while, in the eyes of many Shinigami, this became a proof of the Captain Unohana's continuous practice day and night, which led countless Shinigami to respect Captain Unohana more and more. Obviously, Captain Unohana's strength is already the ceiling that countless Shinigami dare not even dream of reaching. But even so, Captain Unohana still practices day and night, striving to have enough power to maintain the peace of Soul Society, and never slackening in the pursuit of power. When Yorishi, the captain of the 8th Division, personally handed the document recording the recent rumors and trends in the Seireitei to Senju's seemingly gentle and indifferent expression flashed a hint of embarrassment and shyness. In the absence of outsiders, Yorishi, who did not care about the so-called noble and ladylike image, half lying in front of Senju in an extremely lazy posture, asked, "So, what's going on with Unohana? Did you really have some special insights?" "Yeah." Senju put one hand on the document submitted by Yorishi and answered with an unchanged expression. "A little bit." "Really?" Yorishi looked at Senju's slightly sunken eye sockets with some suspicion, and asked, "Why does Vice Captain Senju seem to be a little tired? There's no way, Unohana teacher is temporarily in seclusion, and all affairs can only be handled by me for the time being, so he is a little tired." Senju answered casually. The next moment, Yorishi turned into a residual shadow and disappeared on the spot, then lay closely behind Senju, and her nose seemed to sniff Senju's body hard, and said doubtfully, "Really? Master, then why do you have such a strong smell of Unohana?" And the moment Yorishi came close to him, Senju felt the graceful body like a cat, and his whole body became slightly stiff. Originally, Senju had never experienced those feelings. Even though he had seen Yorishi's spirit before, he was more of a doctor's academic perspective. However, at this moment, it undoubtedly gave Senju a different feeling. Senju suppressed some strange feelings and answered calmly, "If Unohana-sensei has any insights, I am the only one in the entire 1st Division who is most suitable to fight with Unohana-sensei." After a pause, Senju rolled his eyes at Yorishi and said, "Come to think of it, you were a cat, when did you have a dog's nose? Don't forget, I am the former commander-in-chief of the secret mobile force. This can only be regarded as a small tracking trick." Yorishi answered lazily, like a cat acting coquettishly to its owner. However, Senju felt everything behind him, and in order to avoid making a fool of himself, he quickly turned the topic back to the document in his hand and said, "The relevant wind direction still needs to be controlled to avoid developing into an unfavorable situation. However, it is better to guide the wind direction as much as possible, learn from Unohana teacher, practice hard, and counterattack Utomundo to defeat Aizen Sasuke as soon as possible to avenge the shame. Shiffen Yuan Yorishi answered with some lack of enthusiasm, like a cat who failed to act like a spoiled child and had to be forced to work. Okay, I know what to do. After a pause, Shiffen Yuan Yorishi seemed to remember something, stood up and took out an invitation from the death suit and placed it in front of Senju Makoto. What is this? Senju Makoto asked. On the way here, I met the new captain of the 5th Division, Amagami Shusuke, and chatted with each other for a few words. Knowing that I was here to see you, he asked me to deliver this invitation. Shiffen Yuan Yorishi answered. Aizen Sasuke. Suddenly, Senju Makoto's spirit was slightly shaken, and he picked up the invitation and looked at it, and asked. Invitation? Is it a banquet? Yes, Shiffen Yuan Yorishi answered. In order to restore the image and status of the 5th Division and to establish good relations with various divisions, the captain of the Tenbei invited many female members of the Death God Association from different divisions to hold a banquet under the pretext that the captain's courtyard had been repaired. Senju Makoto nodded, not realizing that anything was wrong. After all, the reputation and status of the 5th Division are indeed quite embarrassing now. And Aizen Sasuke used the Female Death God Association as a direction to establish good relations with various divisions. This is undoubtedly the most convenient and direct way. Therefore, Senju Makoto did not have the idea of refusing. In the past 3 days, Senju Makoto has been busy with work during the day and attacking at night, and it is indeed time to take a break. Otherwise, if he continues to work day and night like this, not to mention that Unohana teacher doesn't know when he can end his retreat, I'm afraid even I will have to lie down and rest sooner or later. It's just right, take this opportunity to give yourself a night off. Chapter 727 An invitation I cannot refuse. Okay, I got it. Makoto Senju put away the invitation and asked casually. Yoichi, you have had some contact with Captain Amagami Shusuke. What kind of person do you think he is? Shiffen Yuan Yorishi crossed her arms across her chest, not caring about the visual impact this posture would have on Makoto Senju. She recalled the details of her contact with Amagami Shusuke and answered. It's a bit different from Captain Amagami's honest appearance. In fact, he is a guy who makes people subconsciously relax and trust him when talking to him. After a pause, Shiffen Yuan Yorishi did not forget to summarize. Based on my experience and intuition as the Commander-in-Chief of the Secret Mobile Force, Captain Amagami should be a very trustworthy captain. The 5th Division should be able to smoothly revive under his hands. Makoto Senju. I can only say that he is worthy of being Aizen Sasuke. Harvesting the trust of others is like wielding a sickle to cut leeks. Fortunately, Shiffen Yuan Yorishi was quite confident and summarized in the end with the identity of the former Commander-in-Chief of the Secret Mobile Force. At this moment, Senju Makoto was even a little curious about what Aizen Sasuke had talked about with Shiffen Yuan Yorishi, so that in just a few words, Shiffen Yuan Yorishi had developed trust and admiration for Aizen Sasuke. Judge others by yourself, Senju Makoto felt that he might not be as good as Aizen Sasuke in simply gaining the trust of strangers. In this way, Aizen Sasuke organized such a banquet, and Senju Makoto really had to attend it, lest Aizen Sasuke secretly won over all his bases and he was still kept in the dark. So, this is an invitation that cannot be refused. He even deliberately used Shiffen Yuan Yorishi's hand to hand the invitation to me instead of coming in person, without giving me any chance to test it in advance. Senju Makoto thought helplessly, and then continued to devote himself to work. Now, with the entire GOTY 13th Division back on track, the workload that Senju Makoto needs to handle is naturally greatly reduced, but because the 1st Division involves all aspects of the entire Seireitei. Therefore, the workload that Senju Makoto needs to handle is still much more than that of the other vice-captains of the division. This also makes Senju Makoto once again think of recruiting a deputy for himself, and handed over many unimportant matters to his deputy to handle. Among them, Izanagi is undoubtedly the first choice in Senju Makoto's mind, but it is a pity that Shiwen Yorishi is determined not to let her go in order to be lazy. Then, who else can it be? Senju Makoto continued to process the document while filtering and selecting a candidate in his mind. However, the top leaders of each division of the GOTY 13th Division have just stabilized, and almost one carrot has one pit. It is not appropriate for Senju Makoto to pull any carrot. Moreover, to be a deputy, it must be a candidate that Senju Makoto can fully trust. Wait, suddenly, Senju Makoto slapped his head and remembered a candidate he had almost forgotten, Nikon Otomu. When he was ready to abandon the identity of Kurosaki Makoto, Senju Makoto asked Synopsis and Nekonotomi to temporarily hide in Makoto's secret garden and no longer need to continue to maintain the meaningless flower shop in the world. In fact, it is enough for Makoto's secret garden to have Synopsis to assist in the management. Nekonotomi, who was originally the vice captain of the 12th Division, is more of an assistant in various research in Makoto's secret garden. Therefore, it is entirely possible to let Nekonotomi return to the Seireitei and assist Senju Makoto in handling a large number of tedious team affairs. The only problem is that Nekonotomi has publicly announced the death of Nekonotomi before. Now, Nekonotomi appears in his original appearance and directly follows Senju Makoto as his deputy, which will undoubtedly cause some not-so-good fantasies in the Seireitei. For example, the vice-captain of the first team oppressed the captain of Kurosaki Mayuri with his power, so that he had to succumb to his power and create a daughter to offer to the vice-captain of the first team. So, do we need to slightly change the appearance of Otonashi's spirit? This matter made Kurosaki Mayuri. Thinking of this, Senju Makoto paused in processing documents, stood up and left the office, heading for the secret space under the first team dormitory. Although it would be relatively easier to let Kurosaki Mayuri, who is the real father at Utsuchi Otonashi, change the appearance of the spirit. However, Senju Makoto decided to do this kind of thing himself. Unlike creating a more perfect instrument doll similar to the artificial body in the real world, now in the Soul Society, he needs to let Utsuchi Otonashi remain as a god of death and follow him. This means that Senju Makoto needs to make fine adjustments to Utsuchi Otonashi's original spirit, so that he can appear in the Seireitei in another appearance. Perhaps, in terms of the theories and techniques of scientific research, Senju Makoto is far inferior to Kurosaki Mayuri and Daisen Sosuk. However, when it comes to matters directly related to the spirit, Senju Makoto is undoubtedly the true authority in the entire Soul Society. Even without changing the main structure and anchor point of the spirit, the degree of transformation of the spirit by Senju Makoto is beyond the imagination of others. Soon, Senju Makoto's first medical beauty project in the Seireitei was successfully completed. When Nirvana stood in front of the mirror again, the image reflected in the mirror made Nirvana feel extremely unfamiliar. What was even more peculiar was that even the spiritual pressure characteristics had changed. The height, body shape, facial features, etc. all changed to varying degrees. When combined with each other, although Nirvana's shadow was still retained, it felt like a completely different spirit. Senju Makoto, standing next to Nirvana, asked, "Otonashi, how do you feel? Is there anything you are not satisfied with?" "I feel, although not many things have changed, it seems that he is not the same person anymore," Otonashi said as if he still had not come to his senses. Senju Makoto organized his words and said, "Kurobuta Mayuri is very good at scientific research, but his grasp of the beauty and naturalness of the spirit is simply terrible, so your original spirit is more like a piece of rough, and I have now carried out more in-depth polishing and carving." Otonashi smiled unconsciously when he heard it. Suddenly, a very natural smile was reflected in the mirror, and it was no longer like before, as if it was extremely difficult for the spirit to pull the corners of its mouth on its own initiative. "From now on, your name in the Jinglingtang will be creating something out of nothing. This is your brand new life," Senju Makoto said. "Yes." Chapter 728 Drinking that night. As night fell, the captain's courtyard of the 5th Division, which had just been renovated, gradually became lively. In the intentional or unintentional hints of Asian Sosuk, Hinamuraimamu unconsciously set the target of inviting the banquet to the female vice-captains or captains of other divisions. And because Hinamuraimamu was originally a member of the Female Death God Association, this invitation did not make people feel the slightest bit abrupt. Therefore, in the captain's courtyard of the 5th Division, a series of graceful figures followed. Soifong, Kotetsu Yu, Iokiriza, Kusaka Yarai, Iznaneo, Matsumoto Rangiku, Kachiki Rukia, and the newcomers Kanamashiro and Gido Marilisa, who had just joined the Female Death God Association. When Makoto Senju arranged a reasonable identity for Nyan in the 1st Division and handed over many official duties to Nyan, and then leisurely walked to the 5th Division's dormitory, Makoto Senju's footsteps couldn't help but freeze, and his eyes stared blankly at the beautiful scenery in the courtyard. Yes, that was definitely a beautiful scene. As the moonlight fell, many female Shinigami with their own unique styles were actually soaking in the hot springs in the courtyard, playing in the water. For a moment, Senju Makatao couldn't tell whether it was the moonlight that was too dazzling or the white skin that was too dazzling, so that Senju Makatao's eyes subconsciously narrowed slightly. At this moment, the figure of Aizen Sasuke emerged in the shadows at the entrance of the courtyard, and said with a smile, "Welcome, Makatao." However, Senju Makatao seemed to feel something different from Aizen Sasuke's seemingly gentle and enthusiastic smile, and asked, "Aizen-kun, what are you doing?" "No, I just want to get along with the rest of the squad through Vice Captain Hinamirai," Aizen Sasuke replied with a smile. However, Senju Makatao naturally didn't believe Aizen Sasuke's nonsense at all, and felt that this scene in front of him, no matter how he looked at it, it was not suitable for him to get involved. Otherwise, it would be like passing through a bush of flowers, and even without touching the leaves, it would be fragrant. However, Aizen Sasuke waved his hand towards the courtyard and said, "Ching-jun, please, you are the protagonist of tonight's banquet." But facing the grand occasion, Senju Makatao just wanted to run away. He left the first team on purpose to take a vacation, not to work overtime without restraint. At least half of the female Shinigami in that pool of water and shadows, Senju Makatao knew that they coveted his spirit. If Aizen Sasuke created some special illusions through the mirror flowers and water moons, such as using illusions to cover up the existence of other people, and create the situation that he and Senju Makatao were alone in the hot spring pool. In this way, Senju Makatao can understand the hidden dangers of stepping into it just by imagining it. At this time, if Senju Makatao takes the initiative to get into the hot spring pool, what is the difference between that and Tang Monk falling into the female demon's nest? Even if it is an extreme spirit, it can't stand this. Even, Aizen Sasuke might be trying to deceive him in this way and destroy the internal balance of the Seireitei that he had managed to maintain with great difficulty. I didn't expect it to be a hot spring dinner. If so, I'm afraid that participating in it would ruin the atmosphere. After a pause, Senju Makatao looked at Aizen Sasuke and said, "How about I have a few drinks with Aizen-kun?" Aizen Sasuke heard this, but responded as if he had expected it. "Okay." Then, Aizen Sasuke's figure flashed and went to the height of a small attic in the courtyard. When Senju Makatao also climbed up here, he found that delicious food and wine had been prepared in advance in this attic. Senju Makatao smiled helplessly, sat opposite Aizen Sasuke, and said, "Aizen-kun seems to have expected my reaction." At this moment, sitting on this newly built attic, Senju Makatao looked around and found that this was the only tall building in the entire 5th Division, so the surrounding view was very wide. Looking up, it seemed as if he was sitting in the attic and enjoying the bright moon in the night sky. Looking down, he could see many female Shinigami having fun at a hot spring night banquet below. Aizen Sasuke answered while pouring wine for Senju Makatao unhurriedly. "Makatao-kun is excellent in everything, but he is a little too gentle and kind." Senju Makatao looked at Aizen Sasuke in confusion, and asked while clinking glasses with Aizen Sasuke and tasting wine, "I can't be considered gentle and kind, right?" Senju Makatao has always considered himself to be a pure character, and he has always been purely firm in his original intention. As for the so-called gentleness and kindness, it is just a false appearance to match the identity of a doctor. However, Aizen Sasuke's eyes reflected the appearance of Senju Makatao, and he shook his head. Makatao-kun's gentleness and kindness are not like those hypocritical people who pretend to be humble and sacrifice to others, but they treat ants well. Listening to Aizen Sasuke's remarks, Senju Makatao was a little unresponsive for a moment. Aizen Sasuke, who was originally picking up food with chopsticks in his hand, turned and pointed at the female Shinigami below, as if they were just a dish that could be picked up with chopsticks at will, and asked back, "Isn't it? They are just ants," but Makatao-kun occasionally pays special attention to their thoughts. This is puzzling. Makatao-kun has a special interest and need for the opposite sex, so why not satisfy yourself to the fullest, but choose to restrain yourself? This kind of gentleness and kindness seems unnecessary. When he said this, Aizen Sasuke's eyes clearly flashed with a trace of doubt, and he really didn't understand why Senju Makatao was like this. Although they are beings of a higher dimension, they understand and care about ants of a lower dimension. For Aizen Sasuke, the only thing he cares about is the thoughts of his best friend Makatao Senju, whom he believes to be in the same dimension. With his back to the bright moon, Aizen Sasuke spoke as a matter of course. "In this world, it is only me and Makatao who were of the same kind." Upon hearing this, Makatao Senju's expression changed slightly. Then, Aizen Sasuke filled Makatao Senju's cup again, with a casual expression on his face that only appeared when he was with his own kind. Dang! They clinked the glasses gently again. As the wine went down his throat, Aiden Sussex' face showed a look of satisfaction. He was not happy with the contents of the cup, but with the person he was drinking with. Drinking alone is boring, and you can get drunk only when you drink with others. Senju Makoto also drank it all in one gulp. However, when he put down the wine glass, Senju Makoto shook his head and replied, Aizen-kun, I understand what you mean, but I cannot agree with you on this point. Chapter 729 Kings Cannot Coexist. Chapter 729 Kings and Kings Cannot Coexist. Aiden Sussex asked back. Senju Makoto's fingers turned the wine glass casually, and he also enjoyed the feeling of communicating his inner thoughts with Aizen Sussex. After all, in the entire Jingling court, only Unohana Retsu was completely trusted by Senju Makoto. However, there were some things or feelings that Unohana Retsu could not resonate with. On the contrary, Aiden Sussex resonated with Senju Makoto in this regard, and they could communicate openly. Those are not gentleness and kindness. Senju Makoto shook his head, thought for a while, and answered. That can only be regarded as respect. Respect? Is it necessary to respect ants? Aiden Sussex heard this, but he was even more puzzled. No. Senju Makoto corrected. Respect is not for others, but for your former self. Suddenly, Aiden Sussex was slightly stunned. Senju Makoto continued to speak. Has Aiden never heard of the saying, the boy who once slayed a dragon eventually becomes an evil dragon? Only by maintaining this respect can you avoid becoming the object you once hated. As soon as these words came out, Aiden Sussex fell into deep thought. Aiden Sussex was not born into a noble family, but a person who had been wandering in Rukongei for an unknown period of time. The powerful spiritual pressure and extraordinary talent made Aiden Sussex incompatible with ordinary residents of Rukongei. There were no companions, even any object worth communicating with was difficult to find. Wherever he passed in Rukongei, he witnessed residents struggling to survive. But, just survival, isn't that the simplest thing? From that moment on, Aiden Sussex understood that he was different from those residents of Rukongei, and was different from those ants who had to do their best to survive. The two sides were even less likely to have any resonance. Until Aiden Sussex knew about the existence of the Seireitei and the 13th Gotti Squad, and then joined them with joy, hoping to find something interesting in them. But, there was still nothing. Even the throne was empty. The decayed were everywhere. The boring world was unbearable. Until the appearance of Makoto-kun, while Aiden Sussex was lost in deep thought, Senju Makoto began to taste the food in front of him without haste. The next moment, Senju Makoto's eyes lit up slightly. For Senju Makoto, who was now the vice captain of the first squad, he has tasted almost all the food in the Seireitei, but the food he ate at this moment almost made Senju Makoto's eyes light up. Delicious. Senju Makoto couldn't help but praise, and then asked in surprise. Aizen-kun, who made this dish? It's really great. Aiden Sussex, who came back to his senses during Senju Makoto's exclamation, smiled slightly and said, Mr. Makoto, you are too kind. Senju Makoto was stunned for a moment, and his chopsticks suddenly stopped in the air. He looked at Aiden Sussex in disbelief. Mr. Makoto, I'm good at cooking. Are you surprised? Aiden Sussex asked. A little bit, Senju Makoto nodded and explained. Aizen-kun doesn't look like the kind of person who would deliberately study cooking. Aiden Sussex, who was extremely arrogant in front of others, answered humbly at this moment. It can't be called studying. In order to find interesting things in the world, I have mastered a little more skills. Senju Makoto, who had never paid attention to the details of Aiden Sussex in the past, also became interested and asked questions. A little bit? For example? Let's not talk about the skills related to the god of death, such as the zanpakutō. The other miscellaneous skills that have not been forgotten include scientific research, chess, photography, calligraphy, music, painting, flower arrangement, cooking, tea ceremony, wine brewing. Aiden Sussex spoke in a relaxed tone, but Senju Makoto's mouth twitched slightly. Aiden Sussex's tone was as if the zanpakutō that he had mastered and made many captains ashamed was just what Aiden Sussex learned based on interest. This made Senju Makoto, who had always been a fan, suffer a little blow inexplicably. After Aiden Sussex summarized more than 10 kinds of skills, he changed his tone and said, Of course, in the end, I also realized that simply seeking satisfaction in interests cannot fill the emptiness in my heart. What's more important is to find valuable friends and enjoy each other in a certain interest together. After a pause, Aiden Sussex changed his tone and asked, What about Makoto-kun? What are your hobbies? However, after being asked by Aizen Sosok, Senju Cheng, who had just been hit by an invisible blow, had no time to mention hobbies such as flower arrangement, chess, and tea tasting. Then, Senju Cheng pointed the chopsticks in his hand at the hot spring dinner below the large area of beautiful spring scenery and said, "Didn't Aizen-kun mention my hobbies just now?" Aizen Sosok asked with some confusion. "In this case, what's the point?" According to the basic logic of the operation of the world, the so-called closeness and emotions between the opposite sexes are probably just for the purpose of reproducing offspring, and fantasizing about maintaining another form by placing emotions so as not to completely disappear. Makoto-kun, and for people like us who have surpassed the realm of the god of death, our lifespan can be calculated in tens of thousands of years, and offspring and the like are meaningless. Even if it is an emotional need, a dragon cannot provide enough emotional value to satisfy it that a mere ant can. Aizen Sosok's statement, Senju Cheng can actually understand it. This is just like what Aizen Sosok usually pays attention to, which are undoubtedly the overall situation of soul society or Hukomundo. As for the emotional value of people like Hinamura Mamo, who usually focus on trivial matters in life, there is undoubtedly no place for Aizen Sosok to communicate and understand each other deeply. As for some friction movements, in the eyes of Aizen Sosok who can easily create life, they are extremely boring and a waste of time. No, Senju Cheng raised his chopsticks and waved them, saying, "Aizen-kun, unlike your idea, my traditional concept insists on the harmony of yin and yang." Aizen Sosok was a little confused. In order to explain it more vividly, Senju Cheng gave an example. Just like there can't be two suns in the sky, kings can't coexist, but what about the king and queen, the sun and the moon? Of course, in fact, Senju Cheng is simply beautifying himself to be still in that stage of low taste, unlike Aizen Sosok who looks at things beyond the boundaries of species and gender. However, when these words reached Aizen Sosok's ears, it made Aizen Sosok's pupils tremble. Kings can't coexist. P.S. It's the end of the month, brothers, please vote for the month. Chapter 730 King and Queen. At this moment, Aizen Sosok's mind was shaken, and he was not even sure how this long-awaited dinner ended. In Aizen Sosok's mind, only one conclusion kept emerging. Kings cannot coexist. Reason made a clear judgment, knowing that this conclusion was undoubtedly absolutely correct. In the past, the reason why Aizen Sosok did not consider this problem was that he subconsciously regarded Senju Cheng as the king of Soul Society and himself as the king of Hukomundo. Kings in different regions may be able to coexist. However, with Senju Cheng's realm, Aizen Sosok knew that at this moment, whether it was himself or Makoto, if he took a little step forward, he would step on the throne above the Soul King Palace. There is only one throne. At the time, either he and Makoto would decide the winner to sit on the throne, or the other would choose to surrender. However, the option of surrender has never sprouted in Aizen Sosok's mind. What Aizen Sosok is looking for is a companion who can understand and talk to each other, and he can't stand being subservient to anyone. No solution. Aizen Sosok's face couldn't help but show a trace of sadness, and he murmured, "Makoto-kun, you see a longer-term future than me, so are you reminding me?" However, Aizen Sosok's heart can't accept the future of fighting to the death with Senju Cheng no matter what. A world without Makoto who can understand and talk to each other, what is the difference between that and being in the eternal darkness and silence of hell? In such a world, let alone sitting on the throne, there is no need for it to exist at all. For a moment, Aizen Sosok's solemn expression even had a trace of ferocity. Knock knock. At this moment, the door was knocked twice gently, and then the soft and sweet voice of Hinamura Mamo sounded softly. "Captain Amagai, have you rested?" Aizen Sosok took a few deep breaths, suppressed the chaotic thoughts in his heart, and then spoke. "Please come in." As the door was opened, Hinamura Mamo looked at Aizen Sosok who was kneeling in the dim room and asked with concern. "Captain Amagai, are you okay?" Aizen Sosok was in a bad mood at the moment, and he didn't have much time to perfunctory Hinamura Mamo, so he asked with a hint of impatience in his tone. "Is there anything that Vice Captain Hinamura needs to report?" I'm here to report the specific expenses of the banquet." Hinamura Mamo replied weakly. "Such a small matter, Vice Captain Hinamura can handle it yourself," Aizen Sosok said, and waved to Hinamura Mamo, motioning her to leave. Seeing this, Hinamura Mamo instinctively wanted to care about the condition of her captain, but since the two sides were not completely familiar with each other on the surface, she could only slowly leave and prepare to close the door. At this moment, Aizen Sosok turned his head and looked at Hinamura Mamo and said, "Wait." Captain Amagai, do you have any other instructions? Hinamuraimamu asked. Agent Sosok looked at Hinamuraimamu and spoke slowly. Vice Captain Hinamurai, I heard that you still have fantasies about the former captain of the 5th Division, Agent Sosok. Why? The power and realm displayed by Agent Sosok are obviously not in the same dimension as you. What are you fantasizing about? As soon as these words came out, Hinamuraimamu's face turned slightly pale. After all, being questioned by the current captain about her nostalgia and fantasy for the former captain is a very heavy rebuke from any angle. Even if it is a little serious, the dangerous thoughts that Hinamuraimamu holds are enough to be judged as betrayal of the Seireitei. However, Hinamuraimamu opened her mouth slightly, and hesitated several times, but her pure and stubborn character could not say anything to deny her inner thoughts. Finally, after biting her lower lip hard, Mama Hinamurai answered with a trembling voice. Sorry, I'm sorry, Captain Amagai, I just think Captain Aizen is definitely not that kind of person. Maybe Captain Aizen has his own difficulties. Rationally speaking, Agent Sosok felt that Hinamuraimamu's self-deceiving character was only foolish and ridiculous. Admiration is undoubtedly the emotion farthest from understanding. Although Mama Hinamurai didn't understand anything, she forced herself to define others with her own ideas, and she was determined to pursue it all the way. However, Agent Sosok, who was also confused at the moment, also thought that he could find some reference value in Mama Hinamurai, and continued to ask. Vice Captain Hinamurai, even if Agent Sosok returns to the GOTY 13, what will you do for him? With your strength, do you think you are qualified to continue to serve as Agent Sosok's adjutant? This time, Agent Sosok thought he had touched Hinamuraimamu's sore spot. However, what Agent Sosok didn't expect was that Hinamuraimamu smiled brightly and said, if there is really a future in which Captain Aizen returns to the Seireitei, there are many things I can do for Captain Aizen. At the end of the speech, Mama Hinamurai's expression had inadvertently become a little more shy. However, Mama Hinamurai suddenly realized that the person in front of her was not Agent Sosok, but the new Captain Amagai Shusuke. Although Captain Amagai Shusuke looked like a generous person, it was undoubtedly quite rude to say such words so blatantly in front of the other party. Yes, I'm sorry, Captain Amagai. Mama Hinamurai apologized quickly. Don't worry, you can go down. Agent Sosok waved his hand and said. Yes. Hinamuraimamu retreated with trepidation. In the room that was completely dark again, Agent Sosok's eyes flickered slightly. Hinamuraimamu's reaction reminded Agent Sosok of another message revealed by Senju Makoto's words just now. Kings cannot coexist with kings, but obviously the king and queen will not have this distress. In an instant, Agent Sosok completely understood why Senju Makoto would trust and value Unohana Retsu so much. In Makoto's mind, Unohana Retsu was likely to be the future queen candidate, that is, a role that can walk with the king into the distant future without burden and equality. Pa. The cup held in Agent Sosok's hand was instantly crushed. However, Agent Sosok immediately chuckled, no longer in the confused state at the beginning. With Agent Sosok's decisiveness, he can make a major decision in an instant. Makoto, you will understand who can truly understand each other, Agent Sosok murmured, while one hand was placed on the Kyuka switchetsu that was fused with the Horyoku at his waist. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 731 The Mystery of Kurosaki Ichigo. It's just different from the confusion that Agent Sosok experienced in his heart. Although Senju Makoto felt that Agent Sosok's state was a little bit wrong at the time, when he saw Agent Sosok again the next day, he didn't find anything abnormal. Therefore, in addition to retaining some of his energy on Agent Sosok, Senju Makoto spent more time on the internal part of the GOTY 13. With the threat of Agent Sosok not eliminated as a sense of oppression, Senju Makoto constantly urged the GOTY 13 to pay attention to practice. And many captains and vice-captains who had just experienced a defeat no longer had the decadent and rotten atmosphere of the past. Instead, they took Agent Sosok as an imaginary enemy and invested more time in practice. Especially the captains who mastered Bankai suffered more stimulation than the other Shinigami. After all, for most Shinigami, mastering Bankai almost means that they have reached their limit, and being a captain will also mean that there is no progress. Externally, neither the Hukomundo nor the Queen Sea in the past could pose a real threat to the Seireitei. Internally, if one mastered Bankai and became a captain, there would be no room for advancement. Therefore, in the 1,000-year history of the GOTY 13, genius Shinigami have appeared repeatedly, but they almost stagnated after becoming captains. Now, under the sense of urgency that Aizen Sasuke may launch a war against the Seireitei again at any time, the entire GOTY 13 under the leadership of Captain-in-Chief Unohana seems to have been rejuvenated and filled with a strong atmosphere of practice. Even the captains standing at the top of the GOTY 13, after experiencing a battle with Aizen Sasuke, deeply realized that the gap between captains can be greater than that between captains and ordinary residents of Rukongai. Many captains are no longer complacent with their zanpakutō developed Bankai, but have begun to explore and practice more space to become stronger. Studying the 4 basic combat skills of the God of Death, Zanpakutō, or continuing to deepen the development of the ability of zanpakutō, of course. In fact, Makoto Senju constantly promotes the training atmosphere within the GOTY 13th Division, and more importantly, he knows that the real war will be between the 0th Division and the Stern-Crossed Knights in 2 years. 2 years is very short for the long life of the God of Death, but it is long enough to prepare for war. However, while the combat power within the GOTY 13th Division is increasing at a speed visible to the naked eye, Makoto Senju has never forgotten Ichigo Kurosaki, the child of destiny in the original trajectory. Although Makoto Senju does not know what role Ichigo Kurosaki played in the war between the Stern-Crossed Knights and the 0th Division. However, Ichigo Kurosaki's identity is destined to make his potential quite amazing, and he is also an object of use that cannot be ignored. On this day, Makoto Senju invited Aizen Sasuke to the 1st Division to play against him. On the chessboard, the chess pieces of both sides kept strangling each other. Although Makoto Senju was mentally prepared for the level of Aizen Sasuke, he couldn't help but twitch his eyebrows when he saw the seemingly irreversible decline of his own chess pieces. Aizen Sasuke, this guy is really an unreasonable genius. Then, Makoto Senju no longer focused on the losing chess game, but instead made tea by himself, pushed a cup to Aizen Sasuke, and said bluntly, "Aizen-kun, how much do you know about the Stern-Crossed Knights?" "Yah bark." Aizen Sasuke said the name directly. Makoto Senju was not surprised by this. Perhaps Aizen Sasuke was not the God of Death 1,000 years ago, but with Aizen Sasuke's means and abilities, it would be impossible to completely hide any secrets from Aizen Sasuke. Aizen Sasuke reacted quickly, and combined with the various changes that Senju Makoto had promoted in the GOTY 13 during this period, he said, "I originally thought that Makoto-kun was preparing for a war at the 0th Division, but I didn't expect it to be to deal with the Stern-Crossed Knights. Could it be that Makoto-kun has found their specific hiding place?" Senju Makoto said, "According to my inference, the Stern-Crossed Knights are very likely to hide in the shadows somewhere in Soul Society and create a space to accommodate themselves. That's a bit troublesome. If they don't take the initiative to show up, it would be like looking for a needle in a haystack to find that space." Although his words expressed a tricky meaning, Aizen Sasuke's tone was still so unhurried. "That's right, when dealing with Ithwatch, the Seireitei is undoubtedly in an absolutely passive state," Senju Makoto said while sipping tea. "However, it is still necessary to make some preparations in advance for this." Aizen Sasuke smiled slightly and said when he heard this, "If I'm not mistaken, Makoto-kun, do you have something to ask of me?" "As expected of you, Aizen-kun." Talking to a smart man like Aizen Sasuke, Senju Makoto no longer made unnecessary beating around the bush and spoke directly. "There is one thing that I really need to trouble Aizen-kun." "Makoto-kun, please go ahead," Aizen Sasuke said. Then, Senju Makoto mentioned a name. "Kurosaki Ichigo." Aizen Sasuke said with a little more interest. "The Kurosaki Ichigo who is not a human, not a hollow, not a god of death." Senju Makoto was slightly startled when he heard this and asked, "Why did Aizen-kun say this about Kurosaki Ichigo?" It seems that Makoto-kun didn't notice. Aizen Sasuke smiled and said, "Originally, I also thought that Ichigo Kurosaki's identity should be a product of the combination of human, Shinigami, and hollow. However, after paying attention to one of the identities of Kurosaki Makoto before Makoto-kun, I suddenly noticed a blind spot that I had not noticed before." Makoto Senju frowned and asked, "What blind spot? Is Ichigo Kurosaki really the son of Isshin Kurosaki and Masaki Kurosaki?" "No." Aizen Sasuke shook his finger and said, "The one who truly combined with Masaki Kurosaki was never Isshin Kurosaki, but the special artificial body provided by Kisuke Uehara to Isshin Kurosaki. It's just that in the concept of ordinary Shinigami, the artificial body is subconsciously defined as the body of the Shinigami in the world, but this is just a blind spot created by common sense." In an instant, Makoto Senju's pupils condensed, and he also realized this problem that he had overlooked in the past. For example, Makoto Senju would not be interested in the rent dolls and shadow dolls he made, because those two bodies were essentially made by Makoto Senju himself. It's really interesting. Senju Makoto narrowed his eyes slightly and said, I almost got fooled by Uehara Kisuke, but it's a pity that Uehara Kisuke was killed, otherwise I really want to find him and ask him specifically what he did with the artificial body. Wait, Senju Makoto suddenly laughed and said, Aizen-kun, Uehara Kisuke is dead, but the artificial body still exists. Are you interested in going with me? Chapter 732 Robbery. In the real world, Karakura Town. The entire town of Karakura, along with all its residents, was transferred between the real world and Soul Society. Except for a few people, the vast majority of humans had no idea that they, under the influence of the ghost way, it had been forgotten and ignored by the residents of Karakura Town without them noticing. The entire town of Karakura Town also resumed its normal operation as usual, but some residents occasionally wondered why the flower arrangement master Kurosaki Makoto seemed to have suddenly disappeared. However, even though Kurosaki Makoto's reputation spread far and wide in Karakura Town, it did not cause much waves in Karakura Town. Only a few people could not bear this name. A rooftop of Karakura Town First High School. Compared to the students who seemed to have no change in their afternoon break time compared to the past, the faces of the 3 men and 1 woman on the rooftop were heavy and gloomy. Ichigo Kurosaki, Ryashida, Yasuta Ashatari, and Arai Imanue. After Unohana Retsu was promoted to the captain, Ichigo Kurosaki and his family and Ryashida returned to the real world. However, in the familiar Karakura Town, there was a familiar and important figure missing for Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashida, Makoto Kurosaki. When Arai Imanue learned about the death of Makoto Kurosaki, she cried all day long. Among them, Ryashida was the most indignant and shouted angrily. Damn the Gotti 13, are you going to let it go like this? Uncle Kurosaki sacrificed himself in Hukomundo to protect the Seireitei, but they even refused the request to go to Hukomundo to take back Uncle Kurosaki's body. Ichigo Kurosaki also spoke with a somewhat gloomy face. This is also something that can't be helped. Aizen has retreated to Hukomundo, and the Gotti 13 also needs enough time to recover from the losses in the previous war. What's the point of saying such nice words? After all, the so-called death gods are just bastards who are greedy for life and afraid of death. Ryashida said angrily. Including you, Ichigo Kurosaki. You were going to refuse to follow me into Hukomundo to retrieve the body of Uncle Kurosaki. Ichigo Kurosaki said through gritted teeth. Rick, that kind of thing is too risky. You have witnessed Aizen's power with your own eyes. Even if the two of us sneak into Hukomundo, once we encounter Aizen, I'm afraid we won't even have a chance to escape. Enough. I don't want to listen to your quibbling, Ichigo Kurosaki. Even if I am alone, I will definitely find a way to enter Hukomundo. After saying this, Ryashida kicked open the door of the rooftop and left the rooftop angrily, leaving behind Ichigo Kurosaki with a gloomy face, Yasuta Ashatari with a silent expression, and Arai Imanue with sadness between her eyebrows. The atmosphere seemed to be completely silent for a while. But what they didn't know was that Aizen Sasuke and Senju Makoto appeared above them in hidden figures. Originally, Senju Makoto just wanted to take a look at the current situation of Kurosaki Ichigo, Ishidori and others, but he didn't expect to run into their quarrel. Aizen Sasuke said with a smile. Makoto-kun, it seems that you have also subdued some useful chess pieces during your stay in the real world. Aizen-kun is joking. Senju Makoto shook his head, and then went in the direction of Kurosaki Clinic. The most important purpose of this trip is to determine whether the artificial body provided by Uehara Kisuke for Kurosaki Ishin has been tampered with. At this time, the 3 Kurosaki Ichigo brothers will be at school, and Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki will usually stay in the Kurosaki Clinic to receive patients. After all, even if Kurosaki Ishin's true identity is a captain-level Shinigami, his life in the real world undoubtedly still requires financial support. However, Kurosaki Ishin's medical skills are obviously only average. Therefore, when Makoto Senju and Sasuke arrived outside the Kurosaki Clinic and looked through the window, there were no other patients in the room, only Ishin Kurosaki sitting behind that table, seemingly flipping through some unhealthy magazines. Makoto, what are you going to do to check Ishin Kurosaki's artificial body? Take it away by force? Sasuke asked. Well, that would be a bit too high profile. Makoto Senju shook his head and refused. Besides, Isshin, Masaki and I have some friendship with each other. If we take Isshin away by force, in order to avoid leaking too much information, we will have to do something bad to Isshin. Then force Isshin Kurosaki to voluntarily leave his artificial body, and then Makoto will take Isshin Kurosaki's artificial body for examination. Seireitei said disapprovingly. Okay. Makoto Senju heard this and felt that this suggestion was relatively reasonable, and then asked. But what means do you have to force Isshin to become a Shinigami without revealing your identity? Just wait and cooperate with Makoto. Seireitei said, and then he and Senju Makoto opened the door of Kurosaki Clinic and walked in. Welcome. Feeling that someone was come in, Kurosaki Isshin quickly stuffed the magazine in his hand into the drawer, maintained the few remaining doctor's appearance, and then looked at the patient who came. Senju Makoto and Seireitei naturally would not appear in front of Kurosaki Isshin with their true faces, but compared to Seireitei, who could transform himself in the eyes of others at any time with the ability of mirror flowers and water moons. Senju Makoto used the combination of spirit particles and instrument particles to directly transform his appearance into a yellow-haired bad boy. Therefore, what appeared in Kurosaki Isshin's eyes was a yellow-haired bad boy and a black broom-headed bad boy. However, Kurosaki Isshin did not care too much and asked directly. Is anyone feeling unwell? However, to the surprise of Isshin Kurosaki, the black-haired bad boy walked up to him, took out a knife from his trouser pocket and pointed it at him, saying in a cold tone, "Old man, robbery." Isshin Kurosaki, Makoto Senju. This scene, not to mention Isshin Kurosaki, did not react, even Makoto Senju stunned for a moment. Then, Isshin Kurosaki smiled, grinning with a playful smile, and said, "Are you sure?" As a former member of the Four Great Nobles, the former captain of the 10th Division, and a man who had experienced the war with Seireitei, Isshin Kurosaki believed that he had seen countless ups and downs. He never expected that today he would be robbed by a mere bad boy. While Seireitei maintained the illusion of a bad boy, he urged impatiently, "Don't talk nonsense, old man, hand over all the valuables." Chapter 733. You don't miss your wife. However, facing the threat of a mere human delinquent boy, Kurosaki Isshin just thought that two people were offering themselves to him, and laughed loudly. "Little brat, if you apologize right now, I can still forgive your rude behavior." The next moment, the knife stabbed towards Kurosaki Isshin's head without hesitation. A cold light flashed, however, the speed that seemed to be almost the same as that of an ordinary human was dodged directly as Kurosaki Isshin's head slightly tilted. However, this also made Kurosaki Isshin's eyes stare at the black-haired delinquent boy in front of him with a little more sharpness. Originally, Kurosaki Isshin thought that the other party just wanted to intimidate and extort money, but he didn't expect that he would do it without hesitation. This made Kurosaki Isshin's original idea of giving a casual lesson and then driving the other party away disappear, and he decided to subdue the two delinquent boys in front of him and hand them over to the police for proper discipline. Immediately, Kurosaki Isshin raised his hand and wanted to grab the wrist of the black-haired delinquent boy in front of him, and then do a burst shoulder throw. However, to Kurosaki Isshin's surprise, the black-haired bad boy in front of him reacted very quickly. He dodged in an instant and even stabbed Kurosaki Isshin again with his backhand. For a moment, in the speechless eyes of Senju Makoto, Seireitei and Kurosaki Isshin actually started fighting like humans. Such a fierce movement soon attracted the attention of Kurosaki Masaki, who was doing housework on the second floor. "Husband?" With the sound of people coming down the stairs, Kurosaki Masaki's figure appeared at the stairs on the first floor. However, what made Kurosaki Masaki a little confused was that Kurosaki Isshin and the black-haired bad boy were fighting each other. This made Kurosaki Masaki's first reaction inevitably laugh and cry. She thought there was a doctor-patient conflict, so she immediately put her hands on her waist and gently taught him a lesson. "Husband, it's impossible to hit a patient randomly," Kurosaki Isshin said while fighting back against the black-haired bad boy. "Masaki, no, these two brats are here to rob." However, Kurosaki Masaki naturally didn't believe this sentence at all. Kurosaki Isshin is a captain-level Shinigami. Even if he maintains the state of artificial body, his motor nerves, reaction speed, and combat experience can definitely crush ordinary humans. Just when Senju Makoto felt that the scene in front of him was magical and confusing, Seireitei, who was fighting with Kurosaki Isshin, turned his head and shouted at Senju Makoto. "What are you still standing there for? Kidnap this old man's wife and force him to surrender." Senju Makoto, Kurosaki Ishin, Kurosaki Masaki. And this proposal is undoubtedly ridiculous to Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki. Unlike Kurosaki Ishin, who maintains the state of artificial body, Kurosaki Masaki, as a queency, is a real captain-level combat force even if he maintains the physical body. A little yellow hair. It's really a dangerous idea, Kurosaki Masaki said with a bit of laughter, and then continued to remind. But, little friend, I advise you not to do this. However, Senju Makoto has completely understood what Aizen Sosok meant. Although this method makes Senju Makoto have an inexplicable sense of familiarity, he has to admit that this is the fastest way to force Kurosaki Ishin to turn into a Shinigami without any worries. Moreover, it can also completely preserve Kurosaki Ishin's artificial body without any damage. With this thought, Senju Makoto touched the appearance of his yellow-haired bad boy, and made sure that he would never reveal himself and tarnish his reputation, and said with a bit of apology, "Madam, I'm offended." Seeing this, Kurosaki Masaki also understood that the two bad boys in front of him, who were the same size as his son, really hid some malice. However, Kurosaki Masaki still didn't take it seriously at all, but instead squeezed his white and tender little fist, and was about to say something without any threat. The next moment, the yellow-haired bad boy who looked like an ordinary human in the eyes of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki disappeared instantly. When Kurosaki Masaki's eyes were fixed and he was about to react, a cold blade had already been placed on Kurosaki Masaki's neck from behind. "Madam, if you don't want my hands to shake, please don't make any resistance moves that are easy to be misunderstood." Suddenly, Kurosaki Masaki stopped raising her hand halfway and looked behind her with sharp eyes. At this moment, Senju Makoto's body leaped the breath of the Seireitei at the right time, and quietly put the blame on Aizen Sosok. Seireitei. Kurosaki Ishin gritted his teeth and said, and also distanced himself from the black-haired bad boy who was fighting in front of him. Seeing this, Aizen Sosok also used the mirror flower and water moon to create his own breath of the Seireitei and laughed shrilly. "Wow, Kurosaki Ishin, Kurosaki Masaki, I didn't expect you to be fooled so easily. You have completed the task of Lord Aizen so smoothly. You'll definitely be rewarded by Lord Aizen." In an instant, the faces of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki were quite ugly. Originally, after Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki personally participated in the War of Aizen Sosok, they were a little worried about whether they would be retaliated by Aizen Sosok, thus affecting their original peaceful life. However, they did not expect that the revenge would come so quickly. Despicable. Kurosaki Ishin shouted angrily. "Thank you for your praise, but you don't want your wife to suffer any unnecessary damage, right?" Kurosaki Ishin, obey obediently. When Senju Makoto said this reluctantly, he always felt that he didn't seem to be a good person. However, Kurosaki Ishin suddenly laughed and said, "Who do you think you are holding hostage? Do you really think you can break my wife's defense?" As Kurosaki Ishin finished his words, the outlines of blood vessels appeared on the surface of Kurosaki Masaki's skin at a speed visible to the naked eye. The special defensive skill of the pure-blooded queency, still blood suit. Even if Kurosaki Ishin used his full strength in his initial release state, it would not be possible to break the defense of the still blood suit. However, the next moment, in Kurosaki Ishin's stunned eyes, the sharp blade across Kurosaki Masaki's neck moved and easily broke through Kurosaki Masaki's fair skin. A dazzling bright red blood mark appeared in Kurosaki Ishin's eyes. In an instant, Kurosaki Ishin felt cold all over and was terrified to the extreme. It was not until this moment that Kurosaki Ishin fully realized the seriousness of the matter. His wife was truly held hostage. "Mr. Kurosaki, I repeat again, I advise you not to act rashly. You don't want anything to happen to your wife, do you?" The smug and arrogant smile of the yellow-haired bad boy was deeply imprinted in Kurosaki Ishin's heart. Chapter 734. Full buff. However, when Senju Makoto said this, a certain sense of weirdness became stronger, and he always felt that he had entered into some plot that was not quite right. Obviously, the reason why the sentence just now came out of his mouth was that the atmosphere was there. However, Kurosaki Ishin didn't know that the yellow-haired bad boy in front of him was not coveting his wife Kurosaki Masaki, but his artificial body. At this moment, Kurosaki Ishin stared at the kidnapped Kurosaki Masaki and the yellow-haired bad boy who was close to Kurosaki Masaki's back, and his facial features were slightly distorted with anger. However, the glaring blood marks on Kurosaki Masaki's neck made the furious Kurosaki Ishin retain the last bit of reason, and shouted hoarsely. "No matter what your purpose is, let go of my wife first, and I can satisfy you." Of course, this sentence was actually just to delay time, whether in Kurosaki Ishin's heart or in the eyes of Asian Sasuke and Senju Makoto. Ishin Kurosaki was just trying to make the two arances disguised as delinquents relax their vigilance, so that he could find an opportunity to attack and rescue Masaki Kurosaki. However, the yellow-haired delinquent showed an arrogant and happy smile on his face, and opened a black chamber behind him. Then, the yellow-haired delinquent took Masaki Kurosaki hostage and slowly retreated into the black chamber, saying, "Mr. Ishin Kurosaki, we won't bother you to satisfy us. It's enough for your wife to satisfy us. This is the order of Lord Aizen." After a pause, the yellow-haired delinquent ignored Ishin Kurosaki's extremely angry eyes and spoke to the black-haired delinquent. "Then I will take Kurosaki Masaki away first. The task of capturing Kurosaki Ishin will be handed over to you. I will wait for you at the old place and go back to Lord Aizen to claim the reward. Don't be so long-winded. Leave it to me." The black-haired bad boy waved his hand, and then looked down at Kurosaki Ishin as if he was looking at prey, and completely regarded Kurosaki Ishin as his own possession. At this moment, the yellow-haired bad boy also hijacked Kurosaki Masaki and completely retreated into the black chamber. Even when the black chamber was closed, he did not forget to wave in the direction of Kurosaki Ishin, as if he was grateful to Kurosaki Ishin for handing his wife over to him. Angry. The anger that was simply uncontrollable completely exploded in Kurosaki Ishin's heart. Due to his own carelessness, he mistakenly thought that the two uninvited guests in front of him were ordinary humans, so that Kurosaki Masaki, who was more proficient in long range, was approached by the other party without any defense, and then hijacked. The last time Kurosaki Ishin was so desperate and anxious was when Kurosaki Masaki lost her power due to holy separation and was attacked by a hollow. However, last time, his good brother Kurosaki Makoto helped prevent the tragedy from happening. This time, he could only watch Kurosaki Masaki being abducted by the other party even though he was witnessing it right in front of his eyes. For a moment, negative emotions such as frustration, anger, despair, and shame instantly broke out in Kurosaki Ishin's heart, completely engulfing the rationality and caution that Kurosaki Ishin had maintained for more than 10 years. No matter what, he must take Masaki back. And just at the moment when the black cavity closed, Kurosaki Ishin, who could no longer hold back, instantly broke away from the artificial body. Burn, Yanu. Crescent Moon Sky Strike. The Shikai that instantly appeared in front of the black-haired bad boy burst out with an amazing slash that submerged the black-haired bad boy. Boom. The huge explosion directly wiped out half of the Kurosaki clinic, and the remaining part also collapsed and turned into ruins. And Ishin Kurosaki was like a madman, launching a crazy attack on the black-haired bad boy, moving the battlefield to the sky above Karakura town. At this moment, Ishin Kurosaki knew that there was only one way for him to take back Kurosaki Masaki, that is to control the Yaren Saver in front of him, and then force him to tell the place where he met the yellow-haired bad boy. Or an ambush, or an exchange of hostages. In short, no matter what, he must take Kurosaki Masaki back before she falls into the hands of Aizen Sasuke, otherwise, it's over. However, Ishin Kurosaki, who was madly attacking the black-haired bad boy in extreme anger, did not notice that he was in the ruins of the collapsed Kurosaki clinic. Another black cavity opened, and a palm stretched out from it slowly, directly lifting the artificial body left by Ishin Kurosaki in place and pulling it into the black cavity. In the black cavity, there was an area that should have been nothingness. Large pieces of spirit particles combined into a platform that was as flat as walking on the ground with common sense beyond the understanding of that Quincy. The unconscious Kurosaki Masaki and Kurosaki Ishin's artificial bodies were placed on it. Makoto Senju, who still maintained the appearance of a yellow-haired bad boy, examined Kurosaki Ishin's artificial bodies and Kurosaki Masaki in detail and in depth. Compared with ordinary artificial bodies, Kurosaki Ishin's artificial bodies are much better in structure, density, quality, etc. However, this answer is undoubtedly not what Makoto Senju wanted. As an artificial body used by a captain-level Shinigami, and also made by Urahara Kisuke himself, it is naturally not comparable to some ordinary artificial bodies. However, apart from this, the entire artificial body did not check out anything or traces that should not be there. As for Kurosaki Masaki, although Makoto Senju had been very familiar with Kurosaki Masaki's body in the past, even the queenly power in Kurosaki Masaki's body was restored by Makoto Senju. However, to be on the safe side, Senju Makoto cautiously chose to re-examine. However, apart from Kurosaki Masaki's figure being more mature than a few years ago, no problems were found. After reaching this conclusion, Senju Makoto couldn't help but stroke his chin and fell into deep thought. Could it be that Aizen Sasuke and I are just overthinking? The birth of Kurosaki Ichigo is just a coincidence. Urahara Kisute really didn't play any special role in it. And didn't do anything. Kurosaki Ichigo has two sisters. So nominally the birth of Kurosaki Ichigo is not a special case, but it will produce a new discovery of reproduction of artificial bodies and humans in the medical system of the Seireitei. However, the intuition in the dark is vaguely reminding Senju Makoto, too normal. Instead, it represents something abnormal. Kurosaki Ichigo, death god, hollow, queenly, human, it's simply full of buffs in all aspects. Just as Senju Makoto's brows were completely furrowed, he couldn't help but turn his gaze back to Kurosaki Ichigo. Chapter 735 Mom is about to die. At this moment, in the sky above Karakura town, Isshin Kurosaki was still like crazy, fighting with the Aransei who maintained the appearance of a black-haired bad boy. However, what Isshin Kurosaki didn't know was that the Aransei who had a grudge against his wife in his eyes, was just an illusion. After Makoto Senju kidnapped Masaki Kurosaki and left, and actively attracted Isshin Kurosaki to give up his transformation into a Shinigami. Without Makoto Senju to accompany him in acting and teasing the ants, Seireitei naturally had no interest in going crazy and fighting Isshin Kurosaki in an evenly matched fight. Therefore, the real Seireitei had already retreated to the roof of a building, controlling the process of the illusion in Isshin Kurosaki's eyes with an expressionless face, attracting all of Isshin Kurosaki's attention. It is true that Isshin Kurosaki's combat power level is the best even in the entire GOT 13, but in the eyes of Seireitei, it is a bit boring. Boring. Aizen Sasuke said calmly. If it wasn't an illusion during the battle, if Aizen Sasuke hadn't manipulated the changes at any time, it would be very likely that Kurosaki Isshin would notice the flaw. Aizen Sasuke even wanted to went to the black cavity to see if Makoto had found anything. The next moment, a black cavity only the size of a finger opened beside Aizen Sasuke, and Senju Makoto's voice came out. Aizen-kun, there is nothing wrong with Kurosaki Isshin's artificial body and Kurosaki Masaki. It seems that it is necessary to make the whole family of the research object neat and tidy. Okay. Aizen Sasuke just nodded when he heard it. As for the method of making the Kurosaki family neat and tidy and not noticing their true purpose, Aizen Sasuke's face then showed a faint smile. For Aizen Sasuke, who had played with the entire Seireitei for hundreds of years in the past, this can only be regarded as a professional match. Then, under the active control of Aizen Sasuke, the spiritual pressure that should have been sensed by the entire Karakura town Shinigami was no longer changed by the illusion of Mirror Flower and Water Moon. Aizen Sasuke also controlled the black-haired delinquent boy and quietly led the battle to the direction of Karakura Town First High School. In this regard, Kurosaki Isshin, who was almost like a mad beast, had no idea, but thought that the black-haired delinquent boy wanted to distance himself and then escape through the black cavity. Kurosaki Isshin naturally would not let the only hope of saving Kurosaki Masaki escape, and he did not even dare to let the other party distance himself a little, almost sticking to close combat. And at the moment when Kurosaki Isshin's spiritual pressure and the black-haired delinquent boy's spiritual pressure belonging to the vast old-level Aransei appeared in the sky above the entire Karakura town, Kurosaki Ichigo, Chad Yasuta and Amurahime, who were originally staying on the rooftop of Karakura Town First High School, also instantly sensed the two unusual spiritual pressures. However, due to the poor ability of Kurosaki Ichigo to perceive spiritual pressure, his face was solemn, and he could not tell the direction of the spiritual pressure for a while. Chad Tatara patted Kurosaki Ichigo's shoulder heavily and said, "Ichigo, your father is flying in the sky." Kurosaki Ichigo was stunned, and then he also reacted. One of the spiritual pressures seemed to be exactly the same as his father. Wait, Tatara, when did your spiritual pressure perception ability become so good? And, when did you sense my father's spiritual pressure? Kurosaki Ichigo asked with some doubts. I didn't sense it. Chad Tatara shook his head and pointed his finger to the far sky on the left and said, "Isn't that your father?" Kurosaki Ichigo and Inuyori looked in the direction pointed by Chad Tatara, and suddenly saw two small black dogs fighting one after the other, and approaching the direction of Karakura Town First High School. Among them, the figure in the back, was Kurosaki Ishin. For a moment, Kurosaki Ichigo couldn't help but be a little confused. His father, who had many secrets and pretended to be stupid every day, actually took the initiative to transform into a Shinigami and fight with someone. More importantly, the aura of madness and anger exuded by Kurosaki Ishin was like that of a wild beast, and even Kurosaki Ichigo was subconsciously frightened. Kurosaki Ishin also noticed Kurosaki Ichigo and others who were looking at him in a daze not far away, which made Kurosaki Ishin's eyes full of anger and madness flash with a light. In this moment of fighting, Kurosaki Ishin has already realized that the strength of the Iron Saber in front of him is also quite terrifying, and he is only slightly at a disadvantage in the battle with him. This is a vastode level hollow that is completely different from the Tenesbata that has appeared. This makes Kurosaki Ishin's heart both anxious and worried. If the two sides fight head-on to the end, Kurosaki Ishin is confident that even if it is a vastode level hollow, he has a certain degree of confidence in killing the opponent. However, if the opponent senses that something is wrong and decides to escape, Kurosaki Ishin can hardly guarantee that he can really keep the opponent. Therefore, in order to block the opponent's retreat, for a moment, Kurosaki Ishin didn't care that Kurosaki Ichigo and others were in the school. While fighting with the black-haired bad boy, he suddenly burst out a crescent moon sky rush, and blasted the black-haired bad boy directly to the rooftop where Kurosaki Ichigo and others were. Boom. The aftermath caused by the black-haired bad boy falling on the rooftop was almost comparable to a large number of bomb explosions, causing the entire teaching building to shake violently. This scene also made the students of Karakura Town First High School think that there was an explosion on the rooftop, and a large number of students quickly fled outside the school. When Kurosaki Ichigo saw this, he couldn't help but shout angrily at Kurosaki Ishin, who landed on the rooftop. "What are you doing? Even if you want to eliminate the hollows, this will implicate many innocent people." Kurosaki Ishin didn't smile as usual. He stared at the spiritual pressure target in the center of the rooftop, whose figure was covered by smoke, and spoke. "Ichigo, now is not the time to talk about this. If you delay any longer, your mother will be gone." Kurosaki Ichigo. At first reaction, Kurosaki Ichigo thought that Kurosaki Ishin was cursing. Then, he suddenly realized that his mother was Kurosaki Ishin's wife, that is, his biological mother, and no matter how Kurosaki Ishin joked, he would never make such a joke about Kurosaki Masaki. "Wait." Kurosaki Ichigo's pupils shrank, and he asked hurriedly, "Where's my mother?" Kurosaki Ishin raised his head slightly, and his eyes filled with anger made Kurosaki Ichigo's heart sink, and the word he uttered made Kurosaki Ichigo feel dizzy. "Your mother was kidnapped by the companions of this bastard and taken into the Black Cavity." Chapter 736. No, teacher. Kurosaki Ichigo was stunned for a moment, and then he realized what it meant. His mother was gone. Or rather, she was kidnapped by someone. In an instant, Kurosaki Ichigo's expression changed, and he took the Shinigami agent certificate he carried with him and slapped it on his body without hesitation. Shinigami transformation. Wearing the Shinigami suit and carrying a big kitchen knife, Kurosaki Ichigo instantly appeared on the rooftop. More importantly, Kurosaki Ichigo's spiritual pressure exploded violently. Kurosaki Ichigo obviously couldn't accept the fact that his mother was gone, and he would never think that his father was joking. Bankai. Tensa's aim jutsu. The next moment, without waiting for Kurosaki Ishin to speak, Kurosaki Ichigo performed his Bankai and rushed directly towards the Arensei, who was covered by smoke in the center of the rooftop. Ichigo. Seeing this, Chad Tosho also hurriedly followed, ready to help Kurosaki Ichigo deal with the Arensei. On the contrary, Kurosaki Ishin regained some composure and stayed on the spot to guard against the black delinquent boy's Arensei escaping in the chaos. The next moment, amidst two consecutive collisions, two air waves exploded in the center of the rooftop, blowing away all the smoke. Kurosaki Ichigo's Tensa's aim jutsu and Chidori Asuta's arms attacked the black-haired delinquent boy from the left and right, firmly suppressing the black-haired delinquent boy, who raised his arms to barely block. However, with the huge pressure constantly transmitted to the black-haired delinquent boy's feet, the concrete floor could not withstand it either. As large spider webs spread rapidly on the rooftop, the entire teaching building collapsed. Boom. Fortunately, Due to the inexplicable explosion on the roof note before, the students subconsciously stayed away from the teaching building, which did not cause unnecessary human casualties. However, at the moment of the collapse of the teaching building, it also gave the black-haired delinquent boy a chance to escape. Taking advantage of the empty space under the feet of Kuroseki Ichigo and Chagtatora, the black-haired delinquent boy used ring turn to rush in the opposite direction of Kuroseki Ishin. Don't even think about it. Kuroseki Ichigo shouted angrily, and almost simultaneously chased after the black-haired delinquent boy. Then, Kuroseki Ichigo, who had reacted, didn't care about achieving the achievement of demolishing the school at all, and also burst out with all his strength to chase after him. Even Chagtatora understood the seriousness of the matter. Even though Chagtatora did not have the ability to fly, he relied on his amazing and strong physical fitness to run all the way on the ground in the direction of Kuroseki Ichigo, trying to provide the necessary help. In the ruins of the collapsed teaching building, only Inoue Orion was left using shield Shunriki to protect her body that was separated from Kuroseki Ichigo from being crushed by the fallen ruins. In the center of the ruins of the teaching building, the maintenance of the 3-day shield allowed Inoue Orion to barely hold out a triangular area large enough to accommodate 2 people. A large amount of smoke was inevitably inhaled, and Inoue Orion couldn't stop coughing. However, what bothered Orion the most was that Ichigo Kuroseki and Yasuta of Chadara seemed to ignore her existence, as if they could not see her. This made Orion, who was trapped in the center of the ruins of the teaching building, have a headache about how to get out of this area. At this moment, a black cavity quickly appeared beside Orion Inoue, and then an arm stretched out from the black cavity and grabbed Orion Inoue's arm. This made Orion Inoue's pupils flash for a moment, and a lot of bad thoughts flashed through her mind, and she subconsciously opened her mouth and shouted help. However, before Orion Inoue's voice could be heard, Orion Inoue was instantly dragged into the black cavity, and along with it, Ichigo Kuroseki's body left after he turned into a Shinigami disappeared into the ruins of the teaching building. At this moment, Orion Inoue was extremely panicked. As for her own combat ability, Orion Inoue, who often came into contact with a large number of captain-level Shinigami, was very unconfident. So much so that Orion Inoue, who was frightened, spoke subconsciously. Don't eat me, otherwise my teacher will never let you go. However, a strange and gentle voice responded to Orion Inoue. Oh, who is your teacher? My teacher. When Orion Inoue said this, her voice suddenly stopped abruptly. Because, that is a secret that cannot be told. However, at this time, Orion Inoue's eyes gradually adapted to the darkness in the black cavity, and her eyes gradually reflected the appearance of Makoto Senju clearly. In an instant, a big smile appeared on Orion Inoue's face. Orion Inoue is one of the few people who know the secret that Makoto Kuroseki and Makoto Senju are the same person. Although the last time she saw Makoto Senju's true face was in Unohana Retsu's all-ending space, Orion Inoue still recognized Makoto Senju at first sight. Orion patted her chest, which was a bit unfair, and said with a cute whine. Teacher, you scared me to death just now. I thought I was caught by some enemy. Don't worry. Senju Makoto rubbed the top of Inoue Orion's head as usual, and said. As long as I am here, no one can hurt you. Hearing this, Inoue Orion's face subconsciously lit up, and then pouted and said. Obviously, the teacher is not by my side, and the teacher does not allow me to stay in the Soul Society. This is also for Orion's good. After all, the Soul Society is a world where souls live. It's too early for Orion. Orion should enjoy her life as a human first, and then enter the Soul Society later. Senju Makoto once again comforted Inoue Orion and said. No, teacher. Inoue Orion turned her head, grabbed Senju Makoto's palms with both hands at the same time, and begged. Teacher, I don't have any relatives in the real world. My brother lives in the space created by the teacher. The teacher is no longer in the real world. I also want to go to Soul Society. Hearing Orion Inoue's request again, Makoto Senju couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. After all, perhaps the gods of death can continue to live normally in the real world through artificial bodies, but there is still a difference between them and real humans. Therefore, even if Makoto Senju can guarantee Orion Inoue's life and status after she goes to Soul Society, it will invisibly deprive Orion of a period of human life. Therefore, the best way is to let Orion Inoue die in the real world, and then be sent to Soul Society to reunite with Makoto Senju after death. The decades of human life are not long in the eyes of Makoto Senju. Chapter 737 Perfect Material. Alright, what about your friends in the real world? For example, Arisawa Ryuki. As Senju Cheng said this, a hesitation appeared on Orime's face. For this best friend who she had known since she was 4 years old and who often protected her from being bullied in her childhood, she undoubtedly had a very important position in Orime's heart. And, Orihime, have you forgotten the task that the teacher once gave you? Senju Cheng asked gently. Of course I remember. Orihime quickly replied. I have always been paying attention to the movements and changes of Kurosaki-san. However, when asking this question, Orime's eyes inadvertently looked behind Senju Cheng, and then she found the Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Masaki lying on the spirit platform. In addition, the body of Kurosaki Ichigo was still held in the hands of Senju Cheng. Except for the two sisters Kurosaki Uko and Kurosaki Kari, the Kurosaki family was already lying here neatly. Teacher, this is, when Orihime asked this, there was a hint of hesitation in her eyes. After all, in Orihime's mind, even though Ichigo Kurosaki's status is far less important than Makoto Senju, he is also a very important friend. This made Orihime a little worried. As if he understood Orihime's emotions, Makoto Senju placed Ichigo Kurosaki's body on the spirit platform and comforted him. Don't worry, Orihime, don't forget that the Kurosaki family is also my beloved relatives and friends. The reason I'm doing this is completely worried that something has happened to the Kurosaki family. Hearing this, Orihime couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief, and then she couldn't help but blame herself for doubting teacher Makoto Senju. Makoto Senju let Orihime watch beside him, and his attention was refocused on Ichigo Kurosaki. Makoto Senju actually has some feelings for this child who has grown up with his own eyes. After all, even if you raise a dog for a few years, you'll have feelings, let alone a living person. However, due to the habitual thinking that Ichigo Kurosaki is a Shinigami rather than a quincy, Makoto Senju really ignored the physical condition of Ichigo Kurosaki and did not conduct a specific examination. Now, Makoto Senju personally carefully examined Ichigo Kurosaki's body, but he made a shocking discovery. Because Kurosaki Masaki is a pure-blooded quincy, Makoto Senju is not surprised at all that Ichigo Kurosaki has hidden quincy blood and power. However, by examining the quincy blood hidden by Ichigo Kurosaki, Makoto Senju discovered that Ichigo Kurosaki is actually a pure-blooded quincy. This is impossible. This discovery, which is completely contrary to common sense, made Makoto Senju's face show a trace of astonishment. You know, the birth of a pure-blooded quincy is quite strict. Both parents must be pure-blooded quincy to give birth to a pure-blooded quincy descendant. For example, the Ishida clan is just like this. Because Ishida-I's mother was a half-blood quincy, Ishida-Jin could only give birth to Ishida-I, a half-blood quincy, even though he was a pure-blood quincy. However, the combination of Kurosaki Masaki, a pure-blood quincy, and Kurosaki Ishin's artificial body actually gave birth to Kurosaki Ichigo, who actually had the blood and power of a pure-blood quincy. Could it be, Kurosaki Ishin's artificial body also has the blood of a pure-blood quincy? Senju Makoto thought so, and hurriedly checked Kurosaki Ishin again, and the result was no different from the previous one. Kurosaki Ishin's artificial body is just a relatively sophisticated ordinary artificial body. What's more, Urahara Kisyu definitely can't master the technology to manufacture pure-blood quincy artificial bodies, otherwise what's the difference between that and mass-producing captain-level Shinigami compact power like an assembly line? At the time, as long as ordinary Shinigami enter the pure-blood quincy artificial body, and then through a certain amount of learning, it will be enough to master the pure-blood quincy power contained in the artificial body. Senju Makoto frowned and made a preliminary judgment. So, Kurosaki Ishin's artificial body only participated in the pure friction movement, but it has nothing to do with the birth of Kurosaki Ichigo. Kurosaki Ichigo's biological father is someone else, another pure-blooded quincy. Thinking of this, Senju Makoto's mind subconsciously popped up another figure. Ishida-Jin, who was Kurosaki Masaki's childhood sweetheart, usually wears glasses and looks gentle. No way. It can't be that everyone who wears glasses in this world is not a good person, right? Senju Makoto's mouth twitched, and then he also felt that the idea just now was not very realistic. After all, Kurosaki Ichigo was born with the power of a Shinigami, a quincy, and a hollow at the same time, so his father must be related to a Shinigami. How strange. In an instant, Senju Makoto felt that Kuroseki Ichigo's birth, which was originally very clear, suddenly had countless doubts. The mother is very sure, but who the father is specifically, it's really hard to say. And Orihinue looked at Makoto Senju, who seemed to be lost in deep thought, blinked her eyes, and then carefully approached Makoto Senju. With the light of the spirit particle emitted by the spirit particle platform itself, Orihinue was the first time to observe the true appearance of her teacher at such a close distance. Compared with the middle-aged appearance of Makoto Kuroseki, Makoto Senju's original appearance was undoubtedly much younger, and he seemed to be a person of the same age as Orihinue. At the same time, Makoto Senju's true appearance was undoubtedly more handsome and beautiful, and his contemplative appearance seemed to exude an inexplicable attraction. And Orihinue's eyes, which seemed to have a bit of burning, also woke Makoto Senju from his contemplation and turned his eyes to Orihinue. In this way, Orihinue became a little shy and said, "Teacher, what's wrong? Orihime, under what circumstances do you say that the child born from my union with you has no physical connection with me?" Makoto Senju asked. Suddenly, Inouye Orihime was completely stunned. Senju Makoto realized that this example was a little inappropriate, waved his hand and said, "It's okay." Then, Senju Makoto turned his gaze back to the three people at the Kuroseki family in front of him, and fell into deep thought. First of all, it is certain that Kuroseki Ichigo's Shinigami power is directly related to Kuroseki Ishin, and he can use the secret technique of the Shiba clan, the last crescent moon sky strike. In terms of the body, it is certain that he has completely inherited the pure-blooded Quincy bloodline of Kuroseki Musaki. Wait, Senju Makoto's eyes condensed and he murmured. What if the identities of a hollow and a human are added? Then Ichigo Kuroseki's soul possesses the characteristics of both a Shinigami and a hollow, and his body is that of a Quincy and a human. The four elements are fully integrated and appear independently in Ichigo Kuroseki. This doesn't look like a hybrid at all. Instead, it looks like some perfect material that has all the conditions, a material that is a combination of different forms of spirit particles and instrument particles. P.S. It's the last day of this month, everyone, please vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 738, Necessary Materials to Replace Gods. As for what the material is, the conclusion undoubtedly points directly to God. Could it be, Kuroseki Ichigo is an experimental product deliberately created by Hyoshuga Ichiba? Based on the secret connection between Urahara Kisuke and the Zero Division, Senju Makoto almost subconsciously came to this conclusion. Then, he felt something was wrong. Among the four nobles, the relationship between the Shiba clan and Hyoshuga Ichiba is the worst and most unharmonious. This is due to the grudges in ancient times. When Hyoshuga Ichiba joined forces with the class headed by the four nobles to attack the Soul King, the Shiba clan tried to stop Hyoshuga Ichiba and the other nobles at the last minute. Therefore, if Hyoshuga Ichiba wanted to create an obedient experimental product puppet, then he should not choose the Shiba clan to participate in it, so as to avoid the ancient history from inclining Kuroseki Ichigo's position. Interesting. Senju Makoto's eyes narrowed slightly. Although there are still secrets that have not been completely solved about Kuroseki Ichigo, the meaning and positioning of his existence have gradually become clear. Ichigo Kuroseki, who possesses the four characteristics of a Shinigami, a hollow, a Quincy, and a human, was born to replace the gods, or to become a god. Of course, if you want to become a god completely, it is not enough to simply gather the four characteristics. Today, Makoto Senju can actually control the spirit particles and the instrument particles, so that he can manifest the characteristics of a Shinigami, a hollow, a Quincy, and a human. In other words, possessing extremely high concentrations of spirit particles and instrument particles at the same time is the essence that ordinary beings cannot achieve at all. In simple terms, gods are special beings that possess both spirit particles and instrument particles. In addition to gods, the rest of the ordinary Shinigami, hollows, Quincy, and humans are only composed of one of spirit particles or instrument particles. This is the difference in essence, but it does not mean that possessing both spirit particles and instrument particles at the same time is a god. For example, there are many people with eyes and noses, but the difference in the upper and lower limits of the appearance of the facial features between people is even greater than the difference in the appearance of people and dogs. Makoto Senju is still far from it, and Ichigo Kurosaki has not even touched the border. So, should we destroy the plan of the Zero Division in advance? Makoto Senju stared at the body of Ichigo Kurosaki lying in front of him, and a hint of danger flashed across his eyes. As the saying goes, what the enemy wants to do is what we need to destroy. Therefore, as long as Ichigo Kurosaki's body is destroyed, Ichigo Kurosaki can only remain in spirit form, and at the same time lose some of his necessary characteristics. However, the flash of danger in Makoto Senju's eyes quickly dissipated. Compared with Hyoshuga Ichiba, Makoto Senju is more confident that he can control Ichigo Kurosaki, and the existence of Ichigo Kurosaki is also a very important chess piece. Or in other words, Makoto Senju feels that he needs to further cultivate Ichigo Kurosaki, so that Ichigo Kurosaki, who has the characteristics of spirit particles and instrument particles, will always be exposed to the Zero Division and Yathwatch, as a stone that Makoto Senju touches when crossing the river. However, the power of Shinigami, Hollow, Quincy and human beings in Kurosaki Ichigo is extremely unbalanced. The power development of Shinigami and Hollow far exceeds that of Quincy, which is undoubtedly not in line with Senju Makoto's expectations. In order to make Kurosaki Ichigo as close to Senju Makoto's own situation as possible, it is necessary to keep the different powers in Kurosaki Ichigo in a balance as much as possible. And this method, a certain thought flashed in Senju Makoto's mind, and his expression froze a little. At this moment, in the real world, the black-haired bad boy was chased madly in the sky by Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, which also attracted the attention of Hirako Makoto, Fenj Kaoru and Sarakaka Hisari, who are stationed in Karakura town. Although Hirako Makoto and others did not directly join the battle, they also blocked the retreat of the black-haired bad boy while quickly feeding back the information to the Seireitei. This vast old-level Arensei suddenly appeared in Karakura town. In the eyes of everyone, it was almost subconsciously associated with Aizen Sasuke. For a moment, although the black-haired delinquent boy had been surrounded, the expressions of the Shinigami present were solemn, and they were worried that it might also trigger a second war with Aizen Sasuke. After completely blocking the black-haired delinquent boy's retreat, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki almost frantically pursued the black-haired delinquent boy. Boom boom boom. In less than a moment, the black-haired delinquent boy had already shown signs of decline several times, and seemed to be on the verge of being defeated. Aizen Sasuke was also estimating the time, preparing to let the black-haired delinquent boy be defeated, and then exchange Kurosaki Masaki in this way. This was also Senju Makoto's original plan. Considering the old relationship with the Kurosaki family, he did not intend to really destroy Ichigo Kurosaki's family, or to do something to the gentle lady Kurosaki Masaki. However, at this moment, Senju Makoto's voice once again reached Aizen Sasuke's ears. Aizen-kun, the plan has changed slightly. When Aizen Sasuke heard what Senju Makoto said, his eyes flashed with a few different colors. It seems that Makoto-kun has found something interesting. At the same time, as Aizen Sasuke's thoughts changed, the battle situation in the sky above Karakura town suddenly changed. The black-haired delinquent boy who had only the power to defend himself was forced into a dead end, but his body swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. This sudden change made Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki pause. The chaotic and violent spiritual pressure, self-destruct. This thought instantly emerged in the minds of Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki, and their faces changed drastically. Now, the biggest bargaining chip for them to take back Kurosaki Masaki is to catch the Arensei in front of them and force them to ask for key information or directly exchange hostages. Once the black-haired delinquent boy self-destructs, the possibility of saving Kurosaki Masaki will be comparable to a kite string, watching it drift away but difficult to catch. No. Stop it. Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki shouted at the same time, trying to stop the black-haired delinquent from self-destructing. However, in the eyes of Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki, the black-haired delinquent completely ignored them and shouted loudly, "Long live Aizen-sama!" Boom. The next moment, the inflated black-haired delinquent completely exploded, and the power of the explosion did not spread to Karakura town below, but caused a shock to the space, tearing out tiny holes similar to black cavities. Through those small holes, Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki saw the yellow-haired delinquent holding Kurosaki Masaki in his arms, with an ugly and angry expression. Chapter 739 The only way. What made Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki furious was that the yellow-haired bad boy seemed to be angry at the death of the black-haired bad boy. The next moment, in front of Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki, the yellow-haired bad boy pinched Kurosaki Masaki's face hard and pointed it in their direction, and then made a gesture of wiping Kurosaki Masaki's neck on her fair neck. Then, without waiting for Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki to instinctively stop the yellow-haired bad boy, the black cavity that was torn into only the size of a fist quickly began to close naturally. It was as if the black-haired bad boy's self-explosion was just to notify his companions to escape with the last strength in despair. The last scene reflected in Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki was the last moment when the black cavity was completely closed, and the yellow-haired bad boy just hugged Kurosaki Masaki and went deeper. No. Masaki. Mother. The desperate roars of Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki echoed in the sky above the Seireitei. However, the god of death does not have the ability to open the black cavity. The closed black cavity completely separated them from Kurosaki Masaki in two different worlds. They could see each other, but they could not touch each other directly. This desperate and sad scene also made Mako Hirako, Revenge Cow and Hiri Sarakazu look at each other, not knowing what to say to comfort Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki. Ichigo Kurosaki was extremely angry and let out a cry of grief. The spiritual pressure on his body was shaking wildly, and his face was even unconsciously covered with a mask belonging to the hollow. Moreover, the mask completely fit Ichigo Kurosaki's face, and it seemed that it was still spreading white matter towards Ichigo Kurosaki's spirit. Seeing this, Mako Hirako's expression changed, and he quickly approached Ichigo Kurosaki to remind him. Ichigo, calm down, you are going to lose control of your hollow like this. However, what responded to Mako Hirako was a dark crescent sky rush. Along with it, Ichigo Kurosaki's extremely resolute voice, which seemed to be a mixture of two different voices, rang out. Get out of here. It doesn't matter if I give my spirit body to the hollow completely. I want to save my mother. In an instant, Mako Hirako's face changed completely. Obviously, Ichigo Kurosaki was awake, but confused. The god of death does not have the ability to open the black cavity, which is also the biggest obstacle for Ichigo Kurosaki to save Masaki Kurosaki now. Therefore, if Ichigo Kurosaki wants to open the black cavity and catch up with Masaki Kurosaki, the fastest way is undoubtedly to completely become hollow. However, in Mako Hirako's eyes, once it is completely hollowed, it is meaningless. Normally, complete hollowing will only make oneself lose all rationality, and there is no way to restore the identity of the god of death. Suddenly, Mako Hirako thought of something and shouted. Wait, Ichigo, calm down, I have a way to get you to Hukomundo. Suddenly, Ichigo Kurosaki's hollowing tendency stopped, and his eyes, which seemed to have turned into hollows, were fixed on Mako Hirako. The spiritual pressure emanating from Ichigo Kurosaki was so great that Mako Hirako felt her body sink. Go to the Seireitei. Mako Hirako said in a hurry. The Technology Development Bureau has the technology to open the passage to Hukomundo. It's too late. Ichigo Kurosaki gritted his teeth and said, it's still in time. Mako Hirako calmed down completely at this moment and said, since it was Aizen Sasuke's order to abduct Mrs. Kurosaki, then Aizen Sasuke would definitely not simply want to hurt Mrs. Kurosaki, so we still have some time. After listening to Mako Hirako's analysis, Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki calmed down. After a moment of silence, Isshin Kurosaki made a decision and said in a deep voice. Ichigo, Captain Hirako is right. Let's go to Hukomundo with the help of the Technology Development Bureau. We must rescue Masaki no matter what. Ichigo Kurosaki nodded, and the white substance on his body that had turned into a hollow quickly decomposed, and then he spoke to Masaki Hirako. Mr. Hirako, please. No problem. Masaki Hirako said so, but his heart sank deeply. Aizen Sasuke suddenly sent an errant to kidnap Kurosaki Masaki, which Masaki Hirako had not expected, and there was a hint of conspiracy in it. However, Masaki Hirako could only choose this way to persuade Ichigo Kurosaki to calm down, but letting Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki go to Hukomundo was no different from sending them to die in Masaki Hirako's eyes. We can only hope that Captain Unohana and Vice Captain Senju can find a way to persuade Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki, and perhaps make a more appropriate response plan. While thinking silently, Mako Hirako quickly transmitted the corresponding information back to the Seireitei. Soon, a gate opened by the Seireitei side opened in front of Mako Hirako, just when Ichigo Kurosaki and Isshin Kurosaki were eager to step into it. Wait! A somewhat indifferent voice sounded, and Ishirai appeared beside Ichigo Kurosaki and said, "If you go to Hukomundo, count me in." Seeing this, Ichigo Kurosaki's heavy and angry face showed a touch of joy. However, Ishirai's expression was extremely cold, and he said, "Don't get me wrong, my purpose is different from yours. I went to Hukomundo just to find Uncle Makoto Kurosaki." In an instant, Ichigo Kurosaki's expression froze, and his face became a little embarrassed. After all, not long ago, Ishirai had repeatedly asked Ichigo Kurosaki to go to Hukomundo with him on the grounds of retrieving the body of Makoto Kurosaki, but Ichigo Kurosaki refused on the grounds of danger. At this moment, it was a slap in the face, and Kurosaki Isshin couldn't help but feel ashamed of Kurosaki Makoto. In the past, Kurosaki Makoto had done a great favor to the Kurosaki family that was hard to repay. He took good care of Kurosaki Ichigo and accompanied Kurosaki Ichigo to break into the Seireitei regardless of his safety. "I'm sorry, Rai," Ishirai interrupted coldly. "Don't say those nonsense, Ichigo, you are not sorry for me, but Uncle Kurosaki Makoto." In an instant, this made Kurosaki Ichigo's expression more complicated. Fortunately, Chad Yasutura, who was relatively slow in action, finally arrived here, and after a brief understanding of the situation, he resolutely decided to follow him to the Hukomundo, which barely alleviated Kurosaki Ichigo's embarrassment. Then, under the leadership of Hirako Makoto, everyone hurriedly stepped into the gate and headed straight for the Soul Society, while Fenge Kaoru and Sarakaka Hizari stayed in Kurakura town to continue to guard against attacks. Chapter 740. Unsatisfactory odds. With Mako Hirako and the others rushing at full speed, everyone quickly passed through the dangai. As the gate on the side of the Seireitei opened, the most anxious Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki rushed out first. After all, for the father and son of Kurosaki at this moment, every second is extremely precious. Once too much time is wasted on the way, even if Masaki Kurosaki is finally rescued, I don't know how much Masaki Kurosaki has changed in the hands of Aizen Sosaka, and it is possible that she will be directly transformed into a hollow or other unacceptable consequences. However, just when Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki were eager to go to the 12th Division to find Mayuri Kurosaki and ask Mayuri Kurosaki to open the passage to Hukomundo. What the father and son of Kurosaki didn't expect was that Makoto Senju, the vice captain of the 1st Division, was waiting for them in front of the gate. At this moment, both Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki were undoubtedly quite surprised. After all, as guests who witnessed the ceremony of Unohana Retsu's promotion to the Captain General, the Kurosaki father and son knew very well how much prestige Makoto Senju had in the current GOTY 13. In addition, the Captain General is Makoto Senju's teacher Unohana Retsu. It can be said that Makoto Senju has the right to speak in the entire GOTY 13. After that, Kurosaki Isshin thought of something and spoke with a tone that revealed a bit of worry. "Vice Captain Senju? You don't want to stop us from going to Hukomundo, do you?" However, what responded to Kurosaki Isshin was Makoto Senju's gentle smile, saying, "Captain Shiba, long time no see. Captain Hirako has already informed me of the changes in Kurakura town. I'm not here to stop you." Hearing this, Kurosaki Isshin couldn't help but feel more at ease. Now that the Shiba clan has completely fallen in Soul Society, Kurosaki Isshin is no longer the captain. If Makoto Senju clearly objects, then it is undoubtedly impossible for Kurosaki Isshin to go to Hukomundo with the help of the Technology Development Bureau. Then, Kurosaki Isshin forced a smile on his anxious face and said, "Vice Captain Senju, I'm no longer the captain now, and I have changed my name to Kurosaki Isshin and settled in the real world. You can just call me Isshin." Alas, it's a pity. It seems that many things have happened in the decades since I was away from Seireitei, Senju Makoto sighed and said. And the last war just ended. I was busy taking over various aspects of things, and I didn't have time to talk to you, Isshin, and I left Seireitei and returned to Kurakura town. However, although Senju Makoto's tone revealed sincerity and concern, Kurosaki Ishin was undoubtedly not in the mood to reminisce about the past. While forcing himself not to interrupt Senju Makoto, Kurosaki Ishin found an opportunity and spoke quickly. Vice Captain Senju, I want to use the power of the Technology Development Bureau to go to Hukomundo to rescue my wife this time. Please allow me, Vice Captain Senju. The Kurosaki family will never forget this favor in the future. Senju Makoto patted his head, apologetically said. Sorry, I forgot to tell you. Then, Senju Makoto turned sideways and looked at Kurosaki Mayuri and a group of members of the Technology Development Bureau who were busy in the corner of the square behind him, and said. Ishin specially assisted Seireitei to fight against Aizen Sosok last time, so I naturally would not refuse such a request, so after receiving the message from Captain Hirako, I immediately asked Captain Kurosaki Mayuri to start preparing. And, since we have accurate information about the location of the Hukomundo, Captain Kurosaki Mayuri can open a passage directly to the interior of the Hukomundo, but it will take some time to open the passage. Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo heard this and couldn't help but express their gratitude to Senju Makoto. If it was the old-fashioned and strict style of Captain-in-Chief Yamamoto when he was in charge of the GOTY 13, he would never easily agree to such a request from a deputy Shinigami and a defected captain. Even Kurosaki Ichigo, who was a deputy Shinigami, knew very well that Senju Makoto agreed to open the passage and also carried a considerable degree of risk. Once Aizen Sosok on the other side of Hukomundo took the opportunity to leave the Seireitei to start a war again, they could use the passage to directly invade the interior of the Seireitei. With the comparison, Senju Makoto's thoughtful style undoubtedly warmed the hearts of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, and they sincerely felt a deep gratitude for Senju Makoto. And it was not until this moment that the Kurosaki father and son noticed that there was a figure wearing the captain's aori next to Senju Makoto. What is this? Kurosaki Ishin asked. Oh, I forgot to introduce you. This is the new captain of the 5th Division, Amagai Shusuke. As Makoto Senju introduced him, Amagai Shusuke also showed a simple and gentle smile on his face at the right time, nodded to Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, and said, I have heard of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo for a long time. Please take care of us in the future. Seeing this, the Kurosaki father and son hurriedly returned the greeting to Amagai Shusuke. With Makoto Senju's promise, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo could only suppress their emotions and wait for Kurosaki Mayuri to open the passage even if they were anxious. Out of courtesy, Kurosaki Ichigo also introduced his other two companions to Makoto Senju, Chidori Yasuta and Ishidarai. Then, Makoto Senju's face flashed with some hesitation, and then he spoke. Ishin, forgive me for being so presumptuous, but I know a little bit about the fighting power of Mr. Chad and Mr. Ishida. With just the strength of the four of you, breaking into Aizen's lair, you may not have a good chance of winning. Although Senju Makoto spoke in a very gentle and tactful way, his tone was undoubtedly quite pessimistic about being able to take back Kurosaki Masaki. As the man who forced Aizen Sosok to retreat, Senju Makoto's words undoubtedly added a layer of haze to the hearts of the Kurosaki father and son. In fact, as they hurried all the way to the Seireitei, this moment of effort also allowed the Kurosaki father and son to calm down a little. Aizen Sosok's terrifying spiritual pressure and zanpakutō mobility, coupled with the unknown number of arances headed by the 10 blades, the Kurosaki father and son knew that the gap between the two sides was so big that it was difficult to measure. It's not that the chance of winning is not great, but that the hope is extremely slim. However, in the position of Kurosaki Masaki in the hearts of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, they would never retreat even if they were in front of hell. At this moment, what Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo were more worried about was the possibility of rescuing Kurosaki Masaki. Suddenly, Kurosaki Ishin thought of something, looked at Senju Makoto with shining eyes, and asked. Vice Captain Senju, can you please come with us? Chapter 741. Fixed boundary. Suddenly, Kurosaki Ichigo also realized something, and looked at Senju Makoto with hope in his eyes. Looking at the entire Soul Society, there seems to be only one Shinigami who can truly rival Aizen Sosok, and that is Senju Makoto in front of him. Therefore, once Senju Makoto is willing to go to Hukomundo, the hope of rescuing Kurosaki Masaki will undoubtedly increase countless times. Compared with Kurosaki Ishin, Kurosaki Ichigo noticed the embarrassment on Senju Makoto's face, but he did not hesitate to bow to Senju Makoto 90 degrees and begged. Senju-sama, please help me, your great kindness, Kurosaki Ichigo will never forget it. Seeing this, Senju Makoto hurried forward and wanted to help Kurosaki Ichigo up. However, Kurosaki Ichigo kept the posture tightly, and it was as if the fear, hesitation, and anxiety in his heart had found a point to vent and rely on, and his voice was a little choked. Senju-sama, please promise me no matter what. As long as I can save my mother, I am willing to give you everything in return. Senju Makoto hesitated as he looked at Ichigo Kurosaki with hesitation, which gradually filled Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes with hope. However, at this moment, the seemingly honest and gentle Amiib Shusuke shouted. Ichigo Kurosaki, please don't make such selfish requests that embarrass Vice Captain Senju. Suddenly, Ichigo Kurosaki couldn't help but glare at Amiib Shusuke, and the extremely violent spiritual pressure on his body burst out unconsciously. However, Amiib Shusuke looked at Ichigo Kurosaki without flinching and shouted. Your narrow-mindedness only concerns the safety of your mother, but you have no idea that opening such a passage may bring about what serious consequences to the Seireitei. In order to help you, Vice Captain Senju has been under pressure and protests from many captains. He even contradicted Captain General Unohana several times, and is willing to bear all the consequences alone, just to repay your family's help to the Seireitei in the past. Now, you actually still want Vice Captain Senju to follow you to the adventure in Hukomundo. Don't you know that Vice Captain Senju must always stay in the Seireitei to prevent Aizen Sasuke from sneaking into Soul Society without being noticed, and even trying to use the Creation King key to attack the Soul King Palace again? For a moment, in the face of the honest face of Amiib Shusuke and the series of seemingly exasperated voices, shame appeared on the faces of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, and they were even more grateful to Senju Makoto. Senju Makoto had done so much behind the scenes, but he didn't say anything. If it weren't for Amagura Shusuke who couldn't help but scold, I'm afraid the Kurosaki father and son would never have had the chance to notice it. This kind of unrequited favor made the Kurosaki father and son instantly have a good impression and trust in Senju Makoto. In addition, the Kurosaki father and son also realized that asking Senju Makoto to go to Hukomundo together was an extremely excessive request. Senju Makoto's responsibilities would not allow him to risk going to Hukomundo to save a pure-blooded queency. As expected of Vice Captain Senju Makoto, who was respected by countless Shinigami and many captains risked their lives to break into Hukomundo to save him, it is really hard not to admire his flawless and noble qualities. Suddenly, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo unconsciously had such thoughts about the man in front of them. Senju Makoto raised his hand to block Amagura Shusuke, who seemed to be about to say something, and then spoke with a bit of apology. Ishin, Ichigo, I'm very sorry. Before the situation is completely clear, the responsibility I shoulder involves the stability of Soul Society and the real world, and I can't take risks easily. After a pause, Senju Makoto continued. And, according to the initial opinion of many captains, this is probably a trick by Aizen Sasuke to lure me to Hukomundo, and then find a way to trap me in Hukomundo, so as to seize the opportunity to attack Soul Society. At this moment, although they were politely rejected by Senju Makoto, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo did not feel dissatisfied with Senju Makoto in their hearts. On the contrary, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo only felt that compared with Senju Makoto, their actions were too selfish and narrow-minded, and they felt ashamed. Kurosaki Ichigo, who was still just a teenager and had a lot of passion in his heart, said with a flushed face. I'm sorry, Master Senju, my request was too self-willed. This time, Ichigo Kurosaki called Makoto Senju with a respectful title, and it was completely from the bottom of his heart, not just for the sake of asking for help like before. I should be the one to say sorry, I couldn't really help. Makoto Senju shook his head, then gritted his teeth, patted Ichigo Kurosaki's shoulder hard, and said seriously. Ichigo, don't worry, as long as I have further confirmation of the situation, I will definitely support you as much as possible. There is no doubt that at such a desperate moment for Ichigo Kurosaki, Makoto Senju's character and attitude were almost like a flawless light. The admiration for Makoto Senju unconsciously sprouted and grew in Ichigo Kurosaki's heart. The more mature Shin Kurosaki, knowing that it was unreasonable to ask Makoto Senju to break into the Hukomundo with him at this moment, his expression was extremely heavy. It's not that Kurosaki Ishin didn't believe in Senju Makoto's promise to provide support later, but Kurosaki Ishin knew very well that if he really encountered Aizen Sasuke, he would probably be killed instantly. The ability of Kijika Switzetsu, the perfect Zain quantity, and the terrifying spiritual pressure that can't even be sensed, the two sides are not in the same dimension. Then, Kurosaki Ishin seemed to have made a decision and spoke to Senju Makoto. Vice Captain Senju, can you open the gate for me again and maintain it for a certain period of time? Senju Makoto seemed a little confused. I plan to use the difference in the speed of time flow inside the Dankai and the outside world to teach Ichigo to practice some secret techniques to increase the chances of winning in the Huko Mundo. Kurosaki Ishin said. Practice, inside the Dankai? Senju Makoto frowned and thought for a while, then asked. If that's the case, then by spending an hour in the outside world, you can gain about 3 months of training time in the Sundered world. However, the prerequisite for doing that is that you must expend a lot of spiritual pressure to fix the realm in order to ensure that you can stay in the Sundered world passage. But in this case, Ishin will expend a lot of spiritual pressure to maintain the realm fixation, and I'm afraid you won't have the energy left to go to Huko Mundo for rescue, right? Chapter 742. 3 months of training. Kurosaki Ishin nodded with a heavy expression, and a look of pain and unwillingness flashed in his eyes. This is undoubtedly the only way to gain enough time in a very short time. The speed of time in that Dankai is much lower than that in the outside world, but it is not a place where souls can stay at will. In the Dankai, there are not only scavengers similar to Jutsu, but also Julyu that slowly closes and swallows everything. Therefore, if you want to stay in the Dankai for a long time, you need to consume a huge amount of spiritual pressure to maintain the boundary fixation for a long time. This is also the best solution that Kurosaki Ishin can think of at the first time. Although this cost Kurosaki Ishin to consume a lot of spiritual pressure to maintain the boundary fixation, but in Kurosaki Ishin's judgment, if the secret technique is used by Kurosaki Ichigo, the power will definitely be far beyond imagination, and it is really possible to compete with Aizen Sasuke. Seeing this, Senju Makoto suddenly smiled and said, Ishin, even if I can't accompany you to Huko Mundo right away, I will provide you with as much support and convenience as possible. As long as it is within my power, there is absolutely no problem. After a pause, Senju Makoto patted Kurosaki Ishin on the shoulder and said, Don't feel guilty about being a traitor to the Gotti 13. In my mind, you are still the former captain of the 10th Division, and you have also proved in another way that you want to protect the Seireitei. So, don't worry about the fixed boundary. I will send a Kidmushu to maintain it for you, so that you can stay in a better state to go to Huko Mundo. At this moment, even with Kurosaki Ishin's calm personality, he couldn't help but feel touched by Senju Makoto's care. This is a sense of warmth and belonging that could never have been felt in the Gotti 13 inches that passed. Kurosaki Ishin bowed directly to Senju Makoto and said, Mr. Makoto, thank you very much. Senju Makoto didn't say anything, just as if he was doing something ordinary, and quickly arranged it for Kurosaki Ishin. Open the gate again, summon 30 members of the Kidm clan to enter the Dankai to fix the boundary. Afterwards, Kurosaki Ishin could not wait to take Kurosaki Ichigo into the Dankai and began to practice the secret technique that he had not told anyone. However, looking at the backs of Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo, Senju Makoto, who was gentle and perfect in the eyes of countless death gods, showed a meaningful smile on his face. Then, Senju Makoto and Aizen Sasuke, who maintained the illusion of Tenbei beside him, looked at each other, and everything was self-evident. Everything was also planned. In the extremely urgent situation, Kurosaki Ishin and Kurosaki Ichigo had no extra choice at all, and wanted to strive for the possibility of taking Kurosaki Masaki back from Huko Mundo. The last crescent moon sky strike. This secret technique passed down among the Shiba clan as Kurosaki Ishin's last bargaining chip and hope. An hour passed in the blink of an eye. Kurosaki Mayuri had already prepared to open the passage to Huko Mundo, quietly waiting for Ishin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki to appear. And 1 hour in the Seireitei was equivalent to 3 months in the Dangai. Just as Kurosaki Mayuri was getting a little impatient, feeling that the Kurosaki father and son had wasted his precious scientific research time, he spoke. If they don't show up, The next moment, a shadow that Kurosaki Mayuri couldn't see clearly flashed out of the gate, and then suddenly stopped beside Kurosaki Mayuri. Then, Kurosaki Ichigo's voice, which seemed to have become calm and hoarse, sounded. Captain Kurosaki Mayuri, I'm sorry to have kept you waiting for so long. At this moment, Kurosaki Ichigo's appearance had also changed significantly. Not only did his hair grow a lot longer, but his appearance and temperament seemed to have matured in the blink of an eye. This also made Yasuda and Ishirai, who were waiting on the side, look a little surprised and shocked. Then, Yasuda and Ishirai understood. 3 months. Perhaps it was only an hour in the Seireitei, but in fact, Ichigo Kurosaki spent 3 long months of training under the extreme pressure of desperately trying to save his mother. Then, Yasuda and Ishida suddenly felt that they seemed to be unable to sense Ichigo Kurosaki's spiritual pressure. Ichigo, your training was successful? Yasuda couldn't help asking. Yes. Ichigo Kurosaki nodded, his eyes swept over the others, and finally landed on Makoto Senju, and said, "Thank you, Master Senju." "No, I didn't do anything either. On the contrary, Ichigo, you should be extremely careful when going to Hukomundo. If things are not feasible, it is also a wise choice to preserve your useful body." Makoto Senju said. "I will definitely save my mother." When he said this again, Ichigo Kurosaki's expression no longer had the anger and urgency of an hour, and there was only absolute determination. And Isshin Kurosaki, who was much slower than Ichigo Kurosaki, also walked out of the world-crossing gate. Perhaps Kurosaki Isshin's spiritual pressure did not change much, but under the long-term huge pressure, he looked obviously haggard. Then, Senju Makoto nodded to Kurosaki Mayuri and said, "Captain Kurosaki Mayuri, please open the passage to Hukomundo." "Vice Captain Senju, you're welcome. Since it's your order, I will do it without compromise." Kurosaki Mayuri spoke in that weird and chilling tone, making it difficult to distinguish his true emotions, but the action on his hands was to quickly make the final adjustments. The next moment, a hole similar to the black cavity was torn open in mid-air. Kurosaki Ichigo did not hesitate at all and quickly entered it, followed by Kurosaki Isshin, Yasuda and Ishirai. Among them, since Yasuda did not have the ability to fly, it was Ishirai who carried Yasuda and quickly followed the footsteps of the Kurosaki father and son. Soon, the light of the exit appeared in front of everyone. Without a trace of hesitation, everyone rushed straight in and set foot in the area belonging to the Hukomundo. However, at the moment when Ichigo Kurosaki and his companions appeared, before they could even see the appearance of Gynecology, a dark green horrifying flash of light suddenly swept across. Just when the dark green flash of light hit Ichigo Kurosaki raised his hand and slapped it away as if he was slapping a mosquito. The dark green flash of light, which was emitting amazing fluctuations, was slapped away and changed its original trajectory. Boom. The next moment, the flash of light whose trajectory had been changed, with its amazing power, flattened all the buildings within a few miles. Chapter 743 The Last Crescent Sky Strike. This scene not only shocked Yasuda and Ishirai, but also Ulquiorra, who released this hollow flash, had his dark green eyes fixed. The flash of the King of Hollows was actually changed by Kurosaki Ichigo. In just less than a month, what changes have happened to Kurosaki Ichigo? His strength seems to be completely different from the past. Realizing the change in Kurosaki Ichigo's strength, Ulquiorra did not think of underestimate the enemy at all. He pulled out half of the zanpakutō on his waist and directly returned to the blade. Second stage of returning to the blade. Black-winged great demon. In an instant, the heavy spiritual pressure that had suffocated Kurosaki Ichigo several times on the battlefield before, once again swept across the sky and earth with Ulquiorra as the center. The devil-like posture, Ulquiorra's black wings that covered the sky and the sun trembled slightly, and the thunder spear condensed in his hand, and his figure seemed to have crossed the space and appeared in front of Kurosaki Ichigo. The thunder spear was pointed directly at Ichigo Kurosaki's chest. Ishidai's face changed almost instantly when he saw this. Ishidai had witnessed the terrifying power of the thunder spear with his own eyes. Ulquiorra was a terrifying existence that Ichigo Kurosaki and several captains could barely contain, but he didn't expect to face such a terrifying attack just after entering the Palace of the Night. Ichigo, little, however, as Ichigo Kurosaki raised his hand, he actually grabbed the tip of the thunder spear with his bare hands. Not only did Ishidai's voice freeze, but Ulquiorra's expression also lost control for the first time. The next moment, Ichigo Kurosaki's 5 fingers exerted a little force, and the thunder spear was actually crushed directly. How is it possible? Ulquiorra said in disbelief, and at the same time, facing Ichigo Kurosaki's waving hand knife, he quickly raised his arms to block in front of him. Crack! The sound of dense bone cracking sounded. Ulquiorra's arms were almost visibly cracked, and he was blown away uncontrollably, like a cannonball falling to the ground. The traces of the fall even spread nearly a kilometer away. Ulquiorra forced his right foot to step behind him, and then he barely stopped. However, when the smoke dissipated, Ulquiorra's appearance was miserable. The inside of his arms seemed to have been completely shattered, and they fell to his body powerlessly. How did he do this? How could he be so strong? Ishidori murmured in amazement. However, in the face of Ishidori's praise, Kuroseki Ishin, as a father, did not show any joy on his face, but instead spoke with his eyes downcast. Ichigo is now in a special state, the last Getsuga Sky Strike. In this state, Ichigo's power can far exceed his original level to an unimaginable degree. However, the price paid for this state is losing all the power of the god of death. And there is one more sentence, Ishin Kuroseki didn't say it. That is, Ichigo Kuroseki is the last Getsuga Sky Strike is extremely special. What is sacrificed is not only the power of the god of death, but also the power of the hollow that has been completely entangled and integrated with the power of the god of death. Therefore, even in the history of the Shiba clan that Ishin Kuroseki knows, no one of the clansmen's the last Getsuga Sky Strike can be compared with Ichigo Kuroseki. But, this will be the last sound of Ichigo Kuroseki's power. If Masaki knows, maybe she will blame me. Ishin Kuroseki's heart became heavier, but he knew that this was the last way to rescue Masaki Kuroseki. While Kuroseki Ishin was talking, Ulquiorra's body swayed slightly, and with inertia, he threw the two completely useless arms in front of his mouth. Then, Ulquiorra suddenly opened his mouth and bit the two arms, pulling them hard. Rip. The two arms were directly torn off by Ulquiorra from the base of the shoulders and thrown to the ground. Super speed regeneration is the only Aranseira among the original 10 Espadas who retained the ability of super speed regeneration. Ulquiorra's arms grew back almost instantly. However, before Ulquiorra could make the next move. Boom. Kuroseki Ichigo's figure fell in front of Ulquiorra like a missile, and the Tensei Zanjutsu in his hand pointed directly at Ulquiorra's neck, and asked calmly. Where is my mother, Ulquiorra? I don't know. Ulquiorra's answer was also brief and without any ripples. The next moment, Ichigo Kuroseki's eyes fixed, and the Tensei Zanjutsu in his hand moved and was about to pierce Ulquiorra's neck. Ding! A cold light passed from the side from bottom to top, slashing on Tensei Zanjutsu, directly changing the original trajectory of Tensei Zanjutsu. Ichigo Kuroseki's eyes turned, and then burst out with infinite sharpness in an instant, and a name drilled out from between his teeth. Aizen Sasuke. The arrogant eyes and knife-like facial features were exactly the king of Yuko Mundo, Aizen Sasuke, who was the mastermind behind the Arensei kidnapping his mother. Aizen Sasuke, with one hand still in his pocket, stared at Ichigo Kuroseki as if he was looking at an ant, and said, Oh? Ichigo Kuroseki, it seems that your mother's kidnapping has caused you to change a little. The moment he heard this, Ichigo Kuroseki's calmness completely turned into extreme anger. Aizen, die. Kuroseki Ichigo shouted, and the Tensei Zanjutsu in his hand violently slashed towards Aizen Sasuke. Aizen Sasuke still arrogantly raised Kagome Suigetsu to block as he did in the past. However, at the moment when the two zanpakutō collided, Aizen Sasuke's face suddenly changed. The power of Tensei Zanjutsu seemed to be far beyond Aizen Sasuke's expectations, so that Aizen Sasuke was instantly blown away. How is it possible? Aizen Sasuke's arrogant expression changed as he flew backwards, and he looked in the direction of Kuroseki Ichigo in shock. The next moment, Aizen Sasuke's eyes just moved back, and Kuroseki Ichigo's figure appeared first, and raised his palm to clasp Aizen Sasuke's face. Then, Ichigo Kuroseki's figure suddenly turned into an afterimage that was difficult to capture with the naked eye, and headed towards the sky above the Palace of the Night. Boom! A big hole was instantly opened in the sky. Ichigo Kuroseki continued to lead Aizen Sasuke in this way, quickly rushing away from the Palace of the Night. Until Aizen Sasuke reacted and turned his blade and chopped towards Ichigo Kuroseki's head, which forced Ichigo Kuroseki to stop. However, in this short moment, Ichigo Kuroseki and Sasuke Aizen appeared in a desert far away from the Palace of the Night. Chapter 744. Lonely and Arrogant Heart. Boom! A wave of sand rushed up into the sky, and instantly spread to the end of the line of sight connected to the dark night, as if it was going to split the entire sand sea in half. In the shocking aftermath of the slash of Jinwa Suigetsu, Kuroseki Ichigo's figure instantly retreated to the side, staring at Aizen Sasuke with anger. Aizen Sasuke moved his head, and his eyes seemed to still be staring at Kuroseki Ichigo with a bit of surprise, and said, What's wrong with your power? Kuroseki Ichigo slowly raised the Tensei Zanjutsu in his hand and pointed it directly at Aizen Sasuke, shouting, "This is the power to avenge you, Aizen Sasuke." Interesting. Aizen Sasuke seemed to have completely restored his arrogant attitude and said, "In the final analysis, you brought the battlefield here. It's nothing more than the fear in your heart, the fear that the power of mirror flowers and water moons will make your companions die under your sword, and you know that you don't have the power to defeat me." As soon as these words came out, Ichigo Kuroseki's face sank slightly. Even though Ichigo Kuroseki had made various assumptions and plans during the 3-month training in the Dangai, he did not expect to show his power without reservation and take Aizen Sasuke away from the Kainyaku Palace. Aizen Sasuke, this man is still so calm, can he see through his inner fear at a glance? The next moment, Ichigo Kuroseki felt that everything that came into his eyes had changed. It was no longer the eternally dark sky of the desolate white sea of sand, but it seemed to have returned to Karakura town. Aizen Sasuke's appearance has become that of a Sanakigo, a friend that Ichigo Kuroseki is very familiar with. As if repeating the daily routine countless times, he waved and greeted Ichigo Kuroseki. "Ichigo, what are you daydreaming about? Hurry up, or you'll be late for class." Kuroseki Ichigo was stunned, and looked down at himself, and found that he was wearing a school uniform. Illusion. He was still in Karakura town, so were all the changes just illusions? Just as this doubt instinctively emerged in Kuroseki Ichigo's mind, and his eyes became a little dazed. Asanakigo's funny expression suddenly became more arrogant and playful, and he spoke in a contemptuous tone. "That's it, Kuroseki Ichigo, can you tell what is real and what is fake?" Kuroseki Ichigo's pupils shrank, and he subconsciously clenched Tensei Zanjutsu at both hands, staring at Asanakigo vigilantly. However, the next moment, Aizen Sasuke's voice sounded from behind Kuroseki Ichigo. "Ichigo Kuroseki, what are you staring at? Can't you even tell which direction to face the enemy with your sword?" At this moment, facing Aizen Sasuke alone, Ichigo Kuroseki finally realized how difficult this man was. It's not that Aizen Sasuke himself has a spiritual pressure far beyond that of ordinary Shinigami, but more importantly, the illusion of Kagami Suigetsu cannot be broken, and it will never be able to truly touch Aizen Sasuke. However, after turning around, Ichigo Kuroseki's eyes slowly opened his mouth. "Aizen, are you really determined to do this?" "What do you want to say?" Aizen Sasuke asked. Ichigo Kuroseki opened his mouth slowly. "When I collided with your zanpakutō just now, I felt your heart through Kagami Suigetsu, and your heart is filled with endless loneliness." Aizen Sasuke's eyes narrowed slightly, and he did not answer, but Ichigo Kuroseki continued to speak. "Aizen Sasuke, you can fool everyone, but you can't fool your own zanpakutō. My current state is called the last Getsuga Tensho. In essence, I use my spirit as a blade and use all my power to make a final burst in the form of Getsuga Tensho. So at this moment, I am part of my zanpakutō. So, through the resonance between zanpakutō and zanpakutō, I can clearly sense your true heart reflected in the mirror flower and water moon, that is endless loneliness." Kuroseki Ichigo's voice echoed slowly for a long time. "So?" Aizen Sasuke's somewhat erratic voice seemed to be transmitted to Kuroseki Ichigo's ears from all directions. "So, your zanpakutō will be a mirror flower and water moon, right? Your heart is too lonely and arrogant, hoping to find someone who can understand you, but you will never give up your pride, so you need illusions to cover yourself up." After a pause, Kuroseki Ichigo changed his tone and spoke. "But, do you still want to maintain the mirror flower and water moon? As long as the mirror flower and water moon are still there, no one will ever be able to touch your truth, and no one will be able to understand you." When hearing this, Aizen Sasuke, who was hidden behind the illusion, smiled and looked at Ichigo Kuroseki with a little more appreciation. At the beginning, after noticing the birth of Ichigo Kuroseki, Aizen Sasuke really had the idea of cultivating a substitute for Makoto. But a substitute is just a substitute after all. After getting used to the existence of Makoto Senju, even though Aizen Sasuke tried to cultivate Ichigo Kuroseki. But Aizen Sasuke's arrogance hidden in his bones eventually made him realize that Ichigo Kuroseki was not Makoto Senju, and then gradually he just regarded Ichigo Kuroseki as an interesting chess piece to promote the plan. What surprised Aizen Sasuke was that Ichigo Kuroseki was a rare god of death who could feel the loneliness in his heart for hundreds of years. The next moment, the illusion that completely blinded Kuroseki Ichigo disappeared, and Aizen Sasuke appeared in front of Kuroseki Ichigo, speaking calmly. Interesting statement. As a reward, I will give you a chance to fight me head-on, and also give your companions time to rescue Kurosaki Masaki. As soon as these words came out, Kurosaki Ichigo's eyes could not help but show anger again. However, Kurosaki Ichigo suppressed his inner anger and knew what he should do most. That is to delay Aizen Sasuke and buy enough time for Kurosaki Isshin, Ishido and Chidori Yasutara. As for the method to confirm whether Aizen Sasuke in front of him is real, the next moment, Kurosaki Ichigo appeared in front of Aizen Sasuke and slashed with a knife. Boom. When the mirror flower water moon collided with the Skylock Zanjutsu, the Sansi within the visible range trembled, and the aftermath was like a real raging wave rolling in all directions on the Sansi. At the moment of collision, Ichigo Kurosaki once again sensed the lonely and proud heart from the mirror flower and water moon. Instantly, Ichigo Kurosaki's heart was slightly happy, and he did not choose to completely release all the power of the last crescent moon sky strike, but used the current semi-release method to prolong the maintenance time of this special state as much as possible. Then, delay, suppress Aizen Sasuke. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novel, as there you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 745, The End of Yixin. Boom. Just as the sea of sand outside the Kikyo Palace was shaking. Inside the Kikyo Palace, Isshin Kurosaki, Yasutara Chat and Ryashida also quickly started to act, trying to seize the opportunity that Ichigo Kurosaki had gained by restraining Sasuke Aizen. Perhaps, due to the war, the Aransei under Sasuke Aizen also suffered heavy losses. Now the number of Aransei in the entire Kikyo Palace is limited, so Isshin Kurosaki, Yasutara Chat and Ryashida did not encounter much obstruction when they were rushing around in the Kikyo Palace searching for their target. Of course, Isshin Kurosaki wanted to search for the whereabouts of Masaki Kurosaki. Ryashida's goal was to bring back the body of Makoto Kurosaki, and Yasutara Chat simply hoped to help his friend a little. Isshin Kurosaki was not completely ignorant of the distribution of the buildings inside the entire Kikyo Palace. When Isshin Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki were training in the Dankai, Makoto Senju gave Isshin Kurosaki a copy of the map of the Palace of the Night Palace drawn by Fuwai Zaraki. In addition, in that map, Fuwai Zaraki also specifically marked the location where Masaki Kurosaki might be imprisoned. However, just as Isshin Kurosaki and others were about to step into the palace where Aizen Sasuke lived with a clear goal, several figures stood in front of them. In addition to Wulkira, who still maintained the second stage of the return blade, there were also the No. 1 Stark and No. 2 Bylajun among the original 10 Espartas. In an instant, whether it was Isshin Kurosaki, Yasutara Shatari, or Ryashida, the expressions on their faces could not help but sink. Isshin Kurosaki's plan was to raid Aizen Sasuke's palace and rescue Masaki Kurosaki before the other Aranseis could react. Ulkira, who discovered the traces of Kurosaki Isshin and others at the beginning, is fine. Stark and Bylajun are also here. TSK, a combination of dead gods, queensies, and humans. What a trouble. Can't they rest a little longer? Stark scratched his hair and said helplessly. Bylajun looked at Kurosaki Isshin and others with some anger, as if his territory was invaded, and said angrily. You dare to break into the Palace of the Night? I will let all of you scum rot away. Ulkira, who was flying in the air with his wings spread out, cast a shadow that seemed to cover everyone, and announced calmly. That's it, invader. For a moment, under the spiritual pressure of 3 vast old-level Aranseis, Chad Tazara's body instinctively turned into 2 colors, one black and one white, and took a fighting posture. And Ishidori was about to enter the muscle dragon form and prepare for a bloody battle. Isshin Kurosaki, who was standing at the front, raised his hands at the same time to block Chad Yasutara and Ishidori, and spoke word by word. Leave them all to me, you continue to look for them. Chad Yasutara heard this and looked at Isshin Kurosaki in surprise, and Ishidori frowned. However, even if Ishidori disliked Isshin Kurosaki as a god of death, considering his relationship with Makoto Kurosaki and Ichigo Kurosaki, he couldn't help but speak. It's impossible to win by one person alone. We will fight one each. Whoever wins should not support the others and go directly into the palace to search. This is the best solution. There is no doubt that according to common sense, Ishidori's suggestion is the safest and most reasonable. However, Isshin Kurosaki shook his head and said, One-on-one, you are not their opponent, and we don't have that much time to waste, so, Isshin Kurosaki pointed his zanpakutō directly at the three Yarensei in front of him, exuding a resolute momentum of life and death, and spoke. Leave them to me, you just go in and search, I will buy you enough time. However, before Cheng-ge and Ishidori could answer, the most arrogant Byakugan was the first to sneer. Don't be ridiculous, god of death, I can crush you to death just like a stink bug. Almost as soon as Byakugan finished speaking, Byakugan, holding a huge axe, showed a speed that did not match his appearance, and instantly appeared in front of Kurosaki Isshin. With the amazing spiritual pressure bursting out, the huge axe seemed to split Kurosaki Isshin in half. However, at this moment, boom! A large number of slashing lights similar to crescent moon sky strikes suddenly appeared on Kurosaki Isshin's body, and the momentum it exuded even produced earth-shaking changes. The last crescent moon sky strike at this moment, Kurosaki Isshin's spiritual pressure almost increased in a cross-dimensional manner, even reaching an astonishing level comparable to Yamamoto Seireitei Shibukuni of Bankai. When the giant axe chopped by Byakugan was still in the air, the moment when Yanu flashed by, Byakugan flew back at a speed comparable to the speed of the previous one, crashed into the palace, and even almost hit Stark. The amazing spiritual pressure that erupted from Kurosaki Isshin also made Stark and Ilkira look solemn. At this moment, as he completely entered the state of the last crescent moon sky rush, Kurosaki Isshin's appearance also changed significantly. The original short hair turned into a long black hair hanging behind him, and the zanpakutō Yanu seemed to have been completely connected to Kurosaki Isshin's right hand. The upper body was completely naked, and the raging flames that were transformed by the materialized spiritual pressure wrapped around Kurosaki Isshin's lower body, exuding an extremely amazing oppressive force. This was the last light of the Shiba clan, and it was also a state of gamble everything, connecting their own spirits with the zanpakutō completely, releasing all their power and potential. Masaki, I'm here, just like you saved me from the Yarensei 20 years ago, I will definitely take you back from the Yarensei this time. Isshin Kurosaki didn't have time to feel the burning and releasing of all the power of the Shinigami. The moment this thought flashed through his mind, he took the initiative to rush towards Stark and Ilkira who were blocking the palace. Stark and Ilkira realized that something was wrong, and didn't bother to check the status of Byakugan, and rushed towards Isshin Kurosaki at the same time. Boom! The moment the two sides collided, the spiritual pressure of the three parties was briefly deadlocked, and then Isshin Kurosaki's spiritual pressure instantly submerged Ilkira and Stark with a surging momentum. Ishidori and Shotaro Yasutara saw this, looked at each other, and realized that Isshin Kurosaki might have entered the final crescent moon sky rush state that they had described before. Suddenly, Ishidori and Shotaro Yasutara no longer hesitated, and hurriedly bypassed the battlefield from the side and rushed into the palace. Chapter 746. The blow that separated the world. However, just as Ishidori and Katotori Yasutara rushed into the palace. Rotten, Skull Emperor! A voice filled with anger echoed at the entrance of the palace. The next moment, the black mist representing decay rose and spread with Byakugan as the center, and a new knife scar deep enough to see the bone appeared on Byakugan's skull after he stood up again. Obviously, when Byakugan was too arrogant just now, he was left with a wound by Kurosaki Isshin. Byakugan, who had just returned to the sword, also noticed the two ants who broke into the palace at the first time. Anger seemed to rise in his empty eye sockets, and his skeletal hands waved at Yasutara and Ishidori respectively. Death sigh invisibly, a sigh representing death was exhaled, and the decayed black mist quickly surged towards Ishidori and Katotori Yasutara. Ishidori used the failing kid to quickly distance himself from the decaying black fog. When he turned his eyes, he found that the human Cheng-ge was about to be caught up. Damn it! Ishidori's eyes sank, and he understood the terrifying characteristics of the decaying black fog. It was a terrifying force that could decay all tangible things. No matter how strong Cheng-ge's body was, he could not stop it. The next moment, Ishidori moved his hands and quickly released hundreds of spirit arrows towards the decaying black fog that was chasing Cheng-ge. Cheng-ge, who knew that he was being pulled closer, suddenly stepped on the ground, turned his waist, and swung the giant's right arm towards Byakugan. A torrent of energy similar to a virtual flash instantly formed and blasted out from his fist. The giant strike. Seeing this, Byakugan pointed at Tater-chan and closed his bony palms. The surging decayed black fog suddenly increased and rushed towards Tater-chan with a larger scale. The next moment, whether it was the spirit arrow or the giant strike, they were all engulfed by the decayed black fog, but it only slightly reduced the scale of the decayed black fog, and the speed was still the same as before, rushing straight towards Tater-chabd. Ishirai moved, instinctively wanting to rescue Tater-chabd. However, the two sides entered the palace from different directions, and it was already too late. And at this moment, boom! The amazing Crimson Crescent rushed in from outside the palace, not only engulfing the terrifying decayed black fog, but also forming an insurmountable wall between Ishirai, Tater-chabd and Byakugan. Ishirai and Chadasutra instinctively looked outside the palace, and saw that the vision after Kurosaki Ishin entered the last crescent moon sky stripe state became more and more amazing. The whole person did not have the shadow of the greasy middle-aged uncle before. There was only a figure like a god of war and a ferment-burning eyes. Moreover, Kurosaki Ishin was able to suppress the joint efforts of Stark and Ilkira at the same time, and he had enough spare energy to release this amazing attack. Ishirai and Chadasutra just took a look, and then quickly retracted their gaze, and then left Byakugan and rushed deeper into the palace. Ishirai and Chadasutra also browsed part of the structural diagram of the interior of this palace. According to the map given by Vice Captain Senju, several rooms where Aizen Sasuke usually conducts various experiments are also circled. Those rooms are the most likely places where Kurosaki Masaki is imprisoned, and they are also the main search directions of Ishirai and Chadasutra. And at the same time, on the sea of sand outside the Kainiac Palace. When Ichigo Kurosaki, who was fighting fiercely with Aizen Sasuke, sensed the change in Kurosaki Ishin's spiritual pressure, he couldn't help but lower his eyes slightly, and a touch of sadness passed by. Compared with himself who had only possessed the power of the god of death for a few months, Ichigo Kurosaki understood that his father, who was originally a god of death, had the power of the god of death, which was a more precious thing. At this moment, his father Isshin Kurosaki was also burning all the power of the god of death and entered the state of the last crescent moon sky rush. Boom! Tensaku Zanjutsu and Jinwusujutsu collided and stalemate again. Immediately, Ichigo Kurosaki, who maintained the last crescent moon sky rush, actually pushed Aizen Sasuke's body back continuously. Even, the speed of pushing was getting faster and faster. In less than a few breaths, there were hundreds of meters of traces of Aizen Sasuke's legs sliding back on the sea of sand. But compared to Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes that seemed to contain a hint of anger, Aizen Sasuke's eyes were still so calm and arrogant, even with a hint of disdain, and he spoke. Ichigo Kurosaki, is the so-called final crescent moon attack just like this? Aizen Sasuke spoke in a faint voice. Using the spirit body as a blade, burning and sacrificing all the spiritual pressure to temporarily increase the strength of the spirit body to a level far beyond the level of the god of death, and then fighting the final battle in this posture. However, perhaps for others, this is an unmatched posture, but for me, this is all. You don't have the possibility of completely defeating me. As long as you maintain this special state for a period of time, the battle will. But before Aizen Sasuke could finish speaking, Tensa Zanjutsu forcibly broke open the mirror flower and walked a moon that Aizen Sasuke was blocking in front of him, and the blade pointed directly at Aizen Sasuke's body. Ichigo Kurosaki's eyes, which had always seemed calm, at this moment revealed the murderous intent. Because he had witnessed Aizen Sasuke's near immortality, Kurosaki Ichigo had been enjoying and looking for opportunities, for the opportunity to truly defeat Aizen Sasuke. At the moment when Kurosaki Ichigo swung his sword, the suppressed power of the last crescent moon sky stripe completely exploded. Unlike the red flames of Kurosaki Ishin, what rose from Kurosaki Ichigo's body was absolute darkness, and even Kurosaki Ichigo's hair turned into waist-length black hair in an instant. With one sword cut, it seemed to split the entire world into two with Aizen Sasuke as the center, and the endless black crescent torrent seemed to rush to the end of the world. What Aizen Sasuke said was not wrong. The first increase in the power of the last crescent moon sky stripe on the god of death would temporarily increase the spirit to an incredible strength, but this was just a prelude. The real ultimate strike is to use the spirit body as a blade and swing out the final crescent moon sky strike. No moon. In the silence that seemed to split the whole world in two, only Kurosaki Ichigo's calm voice slowly sounded. Chapter 747. That blue light. As the black crescent disappeared, the world seemed to slowly regain its sound. A rift that spread from the front of Kurosaki Ichigo to the end of his sight was reflected in his eyes, and a large amount of sand was constantly flowing back to the rift. More importantly, Aizen Sasuke's spirit was also split into two, and even more than half of his spirit was completely destroyed. Seeing this, Kuroseki Ichigo was delighted and reached into his arms. It was a white rope with unknown symbols engraved on the surface. This was also what the respectable Vice Captain Senju asked to God of Death to pass on to Kuroseki Ichigo when he was training in the Dangai. According to the description, this was a Kido rope specially prepared by Vice Captain Senju after learning the lesson of defeating Aizen Sasuke's spirit last time, but still allowing Aizen Sasuke to revive with the power of the Hojokyu. It is said that this Kido rope is preset with a powerful Kido that surpasses the 99 ways of binding. As long as this Kido rope can be used to tie up Aizen Sasuke, then Aizen Sasuke can be completely sealed. Opportunity. At this moment, Kuroseki Ichigo's eyes were shining brightly, and he threw the Kido rope in his hand towards the remaining spirit of Aizen Sasuke and Kyuka without hesitation. Success or failure is at this moment. For a moment, even Kuroseki Ichigo, who had already made countless preparations in his heart, couldn't help but accelerate his heartbeat. However, just when Kuroseki Ichigo's attention was completely focused on the distance between the Kido rope and Aizen Sasuke, so that his vigilance and reaction nerves were relaxed. Puff. Kyuka knife tip quietly drilled out in front of Kuroseki Ichigo's chest. Aizen Sasuke's voice also reached Kuroseki Ichigo's ears. You are too naive, Kuroseki Ichigo, you alone can't save anything. Kuroseki Ichigo's pupils shrank, and he felt cold all over. Waves of despair surged like a tide, and the power of the last crescent moon sky stripe that was difficult to maintain quickly faded like a tide. And inside the Palace of the Night, Kuroseki Ishin seemed to have sensed something, and his eyes suddenly looked in the direction where Aizen Sasuke and Kuroseki Ichigo were fighting. He felt his heartbeat, unconsciously accelerating, as if something bad was happening. Immediately, Kuroseki Ishin forced himself to concentrate again and deal with the three Vasto-level Aranses in front of him with all his strength. At this moment, Kuroseki Ishin was very strong, even comparable to Yamamoto Jinrai Shichikuni. In a one-on-one situation, Kuroseki Ishin, who gave his all, could kill any Vasto-level Aranse in a very short time. However, Kuroseki Ishin knew his goal very well. It was not to kill an Aranse at the cost of shortening the duration of the last Getsuga Sky Strike, but to contain the three Aranses so that they could not chase after Ishirai and Chagtatara. The difficulty of these two is incomparable. And as time passed, Kuroseki Ishin became more and more anxious. Even if Kuroseki Ishin did not swing the strongest sword of the last Getsuga Sky Strike, the time he could hold on was already running out. Hurry up. Tatara. Kuroseki Ishin continued to do his best to contain the three Aranses in front of him, and couldn't help but pray in his heart. Boom. The next moment, an energy shockwave released by the giant's blow penetrated from the ground, leaving a large hole that was large enough for several people to pass through side by side. Then, Ishirai held Chagtatara in one hand, and Chagtatara carried a woman on his back. Seeing this, Kuroseki Ishin used the Ojutsu in his hand to forcefully repel the approaching Aranses such as Stark. His face lit up with joy, and then his expression froze completely. That woman was indeed Kuroseki Masaki, but it was not Kuroseki Masaki's physical body, but Kuroseki Masaki's spirit. Moreover, the facial features of Kuroseki Masaki's spirit had hollow matter slowly oozing out, and it was obviously transformed by some kind of experiment, and it directly began to wend the hollowing process. This scene made Kuroseki Ishin's eyes split, and unimaginable unwillingness, despair, and anger surged in Kuroseki Ishin's heart. But, I was a step too slow. Masaki. Instinctively, Kuroseki Ishin let out a roar like a ferocious beast. Aizen. However, what Kuroseki Ishin did not expect was that almost as the voice fell, Aizen Sasuke appeared between Kuroseki Ishin and Ishirai and others in a flash. What made Kuroseki Ishin's breathing stagnate was that Ichigo Kuroseki was just being held by Aizen Sasuke by his hair, with a cut on his chest that was constantly bleeding. Aizen Sasuke smiled faintly. Oh, Ishin, you look very angry. Didn't you foresee this before you went to Huko Mundo? As expected, you are still as reckless as before. Under this continuous stimulation, Kuroseki Ishin completely ignored the three Aranses behind him, and the red torrent on his body completely broke out. The last, Mutsuke. Kuroseki Ishin seemed to have turned into an angry beast that was determined to leave some traces on Aizen Sasuke at all costs, and slashed at Aizen Sasuke with everything at stake. But, as Aizen Sasuke casually raised his palm, the 5 fingers closed, and the trajectory of the red flowing Yanyu suddenly stopped, and it completely stopped in Aizen Sasuke's hand. A hint of sarcasm appeared at the corner of Aizen Sasuke's mouth. Compared to your son's last blow, you are really weak, Ishin. Almost as Aizen Sasuke's voice fell, the Yanyu in Aizen Sasuke's hand was broken by the 5 fingers. This crisp sound made Kurosaki Ishin's pupils completely shrink into a point, and completely annihilated Kurosaki Ishin's last hope. At this moment, Kurosaki Ishin stared blankly at Aizen Sasuke in front of him, as if he had become a puppet whose soul had been taken away. Aizen Sasuke also slowly raised his right hand, put his 5 fingers together and suddenly stacked towards Kurosaki Ishin's chest. It's over. Ishirai and Katotora, who witnessed this scene from afar, were also filled with despair. At this moment, a streak of azure light came from afar and penetrated the entire sky. Boom. The moment Aizen Sasuke's figure retreated, the azure light almost brushed Aizen Sasuke's hair and fell into the distance. Boom. The place where the azure light disappeared was replaced by a shocking explosion that shook the entire Kainiac Palace. Chapter 748 Extreme Guilt. The airwaves caused by the explosion swept in all directions, and everyone subconsciously looked in the direction of the source of the azure light. Among them, Ishirai, who saw clearly that the azure light was essentially a spirit arrow, subconsciously revealed ecstasy and excitement. Such a blow. Being in the Huko Mundo, there is no mistake, it is definitely. Ishirai's eyes condensed, and in his eyes, he reflected the figure of the end of his sight, Kurosaki Makatao with a giant spirit bow in his hand. However, the ecstasy on Ishirai's face suddenly froze, and he found that Kurosaki Makatao was in a spirit state. In other words, Uncle Kurosaki is really dead. Although he had already known this fact, Ishirai's heart could not help but stagnate. When Aizen Sasuke was blocked by the azure light for a moment, Kurosaki Ishin also took this opportunity to retreat quickly, and the power of the god of death on his body began to dissipate rapidly. The last Getsuga Tensho is a special secret technique formed by the combination of zanpakutō and one's own spirit. The moment Kurosaki Ishin's zanpakutō, Yojetsu, was destroyed, it also announced that Kurosaki Ishin's the last Getsuga Tensho state was completely over. However, Aizen Sasuke's attention seemed to no longer be on Kurosaki Ishin. Instead, he looked in the direction of Kurosaki Makatao and spoke from a distance. "You finally showed up, Mr. Kurosaki Makatao," who was hiding from X said. Kurosaki Makatao responded from a distance. "Aizen, you are so despicable. Are you going to force me to surrender in this way?" "Despicable?" Aizen Sasuke asked back as if he had heard something funny. "Then Mr. Kurosaki Makatao has been hunting down the Yaranses of the Hukoyajuchi with beyond visual range attacks for the past month. Isn't that despicable?" As soon as these words came out, Kurosaki Ishin, Ishirai, and Shotaro Yasutara suddenly realized the unreasonableness they had noticed in the Hukoyajuchi before. According to the information provided by the 13th Gotti Squad, the Hukoyajuchi has a large number of Aranses in addition to the 10 Espada, and as long as there are hollows in the Huko Mundo, Aizen Sasuke can continue to create a large number of Aranses. However, when Kurosaki Ishin and others were rampaging in the Hukoyajuchi, they didn't find even one Aranse except Stark, Byakugan, and Ulkura. Therefore, the reason for all this is that Kurosaki Makatao, who has transformed into a spirit after death, is still fighting with the Hukoyajuchi, using a unique fighting method to reduce the number of Aranses in the Hukoyajuchi. Even when Aizen Sasuke ordered the 2 Aranses to bring back Kurosaki Masaki from Karakura town and transform him into a hollow, it was probably because he wanted to force Kurosaki Masaki, or transform Kurosaki Masaki, who was also a queency, into a hollow, to deal with Senju Masaki. And Kurosaki Masaki replied calmly from a distance. "The fate of a queency is to destroy hollows. As long as you control the number of Aranses under you, you can continue to prolong your ambition to destroy the peace between the real world and the Soul Society. You, damn it." At this moment, from Aizen Sasuke's tone, whether it was Kurosaki Ishin, Ishirai, or Shotaro Yasutara, they all heard a hint of anger. The next moment, Kurosaki Ichigo, who was held in Aizen Sasuke's hand, was thrown to the ground casually, and the whole person quickly flew towards the direction of Kurosaki Makatao and announced, "But since you have appeared in front of me, do you think you still have a chance to leave?" In that heavy blow, Kurosaki Ishin, who was originally seriously injured and in a coma, woke up again. However, when Kurosaki Ichigo saw Kurosaki Makatao appearing in the distance, he was stunned. "Wake up, too strong. or have I reunited with Uncle Kurosaki Makoto in hell? However, when Kurosaki Ichigo saw Aizen Sasuke quickly rushing towards Kurosaki Makoto, he quickly reacted and wanted to hold Tensa Zanjutsu to continue fighting. Kurosaki Ichigo closed the 5 fingers of his right hand, but grasped nothing, and realized that his spirit body was not full of surging spiritual power like in the past, but instead felt as weak as when he lost the power of the god of death. Oh right. The last crescent moon sky stripe state is over, which means I have completely lost the power of the god of death. The moment this thought flashed through Ichigo Kurosaki's mind, the sky of the Kainyaku Palace, which was originally like a clear sky in the real world, suddenly appeared with countless stars. No, or rather, it was countless spirit arrows. Then, those spirit arrows were frantically sweeping the 5 kilometers centered on Kurosaki Makoto in an indiscriminate manner. However, this overwhelming attack shocked Ichigo Kurosaki and others, but it was not enough to stop Aizen Sasuke's footsteps. Aizen Sasuke, who was in the middle of it, might have greatly reduced his speed of approaching Kurosaki Makoto, but he kept blocking spirit arrows at an incredible speed and continued to move towards Kurosaki Makoto. What's worse is that Kurosaki Makoto, who was also deeply trapped in the Mirror Flower and Water Moon, seemed unable to determine the exact direction of Aizen Sasuke. This made Ishirai and Kurosaki Ichigo, who were bystanders, anxious. When they were about to open their mouths to remind Kurosaki Makoto, the voice of Kurosaki Makoto was the first to sound. Ichigo, Rai, don't worry about me, go. I killed most of the Aranseis in the Palace of the Night. Aizen Sasuke's first target will definitely be me. Go. No matter what you see, don't believe it, and don't look back. As soon as these words came out, Ishirai's eyes turned red almost instantly. If Chagasuta hadn't hugged Ishirai in time, I'm afraid Ishirai would have instinctively rushed towards the direction of Kurosaki Makoto. As for Kurosaki Ichigo, the extremely strong sense of guilt surged in his chest. Kurosaki Ichigo undoubtedly has a deep affection for Kurosaki Makoto, which is second only to his parents. However, at this moment, facing Kurosaki Makoto, who has clearly died once, he still uses his life as a wall to protect himself. Ichigo Kurosaki recalled that he had repeatedly rejected Ishirai's request to go to Hukomundo with him in the real world, and felt an unimaginable sense of shame corroding his heart. I am not a human. Am I really worthy of Uncle Kurosaki risking his life to save me? Ichigo Kurosaki bit his lower lip tightly and struggled to stand up. In the midst of the strong sense of guilt, Ichigo Kurosaki had no thought of running away. I might as well die here, as I am so miserable. Chapter 749. Are you all alive? However, at this moment, Kurosaki Ishin grabbed Kurosaki Ichigo's arm and shouted in a low voice. Let's go, Ichigo. Upon hearing this, Kurosaki Ichigo turned his head and looked at Kurosaki Ishin in shock, his eyes full of disbelief as if he was looking at a stranger, and said, That's Uncle Kurosaki. Are we going to abandon Uncle Kurosaki and run for our lives? Upon hearing this, Kurosaki Ishin felt guilty. The Kurosaki family has received too many favors from Kurosaki Makoto, whether it was when Kurosaki Masaki encountered the holy separation and was attacked, or the current crisis, it was a favor that the Kurosaki family could not repay. However, Kurosaki Ishin still retained some rationality in his heart, and said anxiously, don't waste Kurosaki Makoto's sacrifice. If we stay here, we will only hold back Kurosaki Makoto. Only when Kurosaki Makoto confirms that we have escaped, he will have the opportunity to leave quickly. Until this moment, Kurosaki Ishin's heart has completely deduced the original appearance of this incident. After Kurosaki Makoto sacrificed himself in Hukomundo, everyone subconsciously ignored Kurosaki Makoto's identity as a human. Therefore, after Aizen Sasuke and Unohana and other Shinigami left the Hukomundo, Kurosaki Makoto's soul left his body and transformed into a spirit. Then, Kurosaki Makoto probably took advantage of the fact that Aizen Sasuke and Aten Espada were not in the Hukomundo to destroy a large number of Aransei in the Hukomundo. Moreover, after Aizen Sasuke returned to the Hukomundo and started to create Aransei again, he continued to harass the Hukomundo and kill Aransei through beyond visual range attacks. This also resulted in Aizen Sasuke being unable to continue to accumulate enough Aransei, and once again launched an attack on the Seireitei and Kurakura town. Beyond visual range attacks also made Aizen Sasuke helpless against Kurosaki Makoto. In this case, in order to force Kurosaki Makoto to show up, Aizen Sasuke deliberately sent Seireitei to Karakura town to attack and abduct Kurosaki Masaki, luring himself, Kurosaki Ichigo and Ishidarai to break into the Hukomundo. And it makes sense that Aizen Sasuke was so easily taken out of the Hukomundo by Kurosaki Ichigo, and that he, Ishidarai and Chad Yasutara successfully took back Kurosaki Masaki's spirit. Because, from the beginning, Aizen Sasuke's ultimate goal was to constantly expand the movement, attract Kurosaki Makoto who was hiding somewhere, and finally solve the big problem of Kurosaki Makoto. Damn it. Kurosaki Ishin said fiercely in his heart, and he did not regret that he risked his life to save Kurosaki Masaki, but he blamed himself for dragging Kurosaki Makoto's feet invisibly, so that Kurosaki Makoto had to show up at the risk of his life. However, now Ishin Kurosaki knows that there is no point in saying this anymore. On the contrary, from a rational point of view, escaping from the Palace of the Dead quickly is the best choice for Makoto Kurosaki. Ishin Kurosaki, who has also completely lost the power of the God of Death, tugged at Ichigo Kurosaki's arm and shouted, "Go! Ichigo!" Ichigo Kurosaki bit his lower lip tightly, struggling and feeling guilty as he went to meet up with Ryashida and Yasutara Chad. Now, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki have completely lost the power of the God of Death, and their situation is only slightly better than that of the residents of Rukongai. If they want to escape from the Palace of the Dead, they can only rely on Ryashida and Yasutara Chad. However, when everyone got together, Ichigo Kurosaki and Ishin Kurosaki had no time to worry about Masaki Kurosaki who was in the state of holloization. Stark, Bailijin and Ulquiorra surrounded Ichigo Kurosaki and others from different directions. "It's too late to escape now, isn't it?" Bailijin said with a tone full of resentment and sarcasm. Not long ago, he was forced to the brink of death by Kurosaki Ishin many times, which undoubtedly made Bailijin have an absolute killing intention towards Kurosaki Ishin. Even without the order of Aizen Sasuke, Bailijin would never allow Kurosaki Ishin to escape from the Palace of the Night Palace alive. At this moment, Ishidarai, Chad Yasutara, and the Kurosaki father and son couldn't help but feel depressed. With the strength of these vast old-level ancestors in front of them, relying on Ishidarai and Chad Yasutara alone, there is absolutely no possibility of escape. Not to mention, Ishidarai and Chad Yasutara have to take the three burdens of the Kurosaki family with them. Kurosaki Ichigo took a deep breath, and then spoke in a relaxed tone. "Chad, Rai, leave as soon as you find a chance." Ishidarai sneered and said when he heard this, "Ichigo, although I hate you, I will never abandon my companions." Chad Tatara did not answer, but only took a fighting stance, and his eyes hidden in his curly hair revealed an unprecedented ferocity. However, this tragic scene did not arouse Bailijin's sympathy at all, but made Bailijin feel that his dignity was challenged, and said, "Hehe, a few ants are still assuming that they can escape successfully. Don't worry, I will completely rot you one by one." The next moment, Bailijin took the lead, and the rotten black mist rising from his body rushed towards Ichigo Kurosaki and others frantically. Just when Ishidarai and Chad Tatara were ready to fight to the death, and Kurosaki was holding Kurosaki Masaki tightly, suddenly, Ichigo Kurosaki felt that the ghost robe he was holding unconsciously in his hand was getting hot. Seeing that the decaying black fog was about to surge and block Chad Tatara in front, a passage similar to a black cavity suddenly appeared above the heads of Kurosaki Ichigo and others. Then, at the same time as a figure walked out, a wooden giant palm appeared in front of Chad Tatara and suddenly fanned in the direction of Bailijin. Zzz. The decaying black fog was decaying the wooden giant palm at a speed visible to the naked eye, but compared with the decaying speed of the decaying black fog, the wooden giant palm expanded dozens of times in almost the blink of an eye. The decaying black fog that made countless beings terrified was directly slapped away, and the wooden giant palm that fell with the force of thunder directly slapped Bailijin's body. Boom boom. A palm slapped down, and the earth shook. Moreover, a giant palm print comparable to the size of a palace was left on the ground. Bailijin's original terrifying spiritual pressure that made Ishidarai and Chad Tatara feel almost unable to breathe also completely disappeared in the blink of an eye. This crushing scene did not frighten Ichigo Kurosaki and the others. Instead, they all looked at the figure that had just appeared with joy and excitement. Senju Makoto waved to the people below and asked in a gentle and reliable tone, "Finally we caught up. Are you all safe?" Chapter 750 Reversal of Situation. Of course, whether he died or not, Makoto Senju was naturally very clear, but Ichigo Kurosaki and others didn't know. In such a desperate situation, Makoto Senju's appearance was almost like a beacon in the dark night. How could Ichigo Kurosaki and others not be excited and happy? Especially before, Makoto Senju had already refused the request to come to Hutomundo together, which had already brought the expectations of Isshin Kurosaki and others for the support of the 13th Division of the Gotti to the bottom. Otherwise, Isshin Kurosaki would not have resolutely allowed himself and Ichigo Kurosaki to use the secret technique of the last crescent moon sky strike. Vice Captain Senju, why are you here? It's okay, Vice Captain Senju came too timely. Vice Captain Senju, please save Uncle Kurosaki no matter what. After Ichigo Kurosaki and Ryashita reacted, they spoke almost in unison and pointed in the direction of the fierce battle between Sosafrazen and Makoto Kurosaki. However, the battle in the eyes of Kurosaki, Ichigo and others, reflected in the eyes of Senju Makoto, was only Aizen Sosake with a smile. Of course, if Senju Makoto wants, he can also create a flawless Kurosaki Makoto spirit body as he did in the Expeditionary Corps, and lay out in a more meticulous and perfect way. However, now with Aizen Sosake's Mirror Flower and Water Moon ability, Senju Makoto will naturally not deliberately abandon that kind of thought, but choose to let Aizen Sosake direct and act himself. Perhaps, Kurosaki Isshin may not have the idea that the appearance of Kurosaki Makoto is an illusion, but the most important thing is the nearly perfect logic. If Kurosaki Makoto does not appear, it will add a lot of doubt to Aizen Sosake's abnormal actions. However, Kurosaki Makoto's sacrifice of his life will only make all this reasonable, and when Aizen Sosake has completely dominated the situation. The appearance of Kurosaki Makoto meant nothing to Aizen Sosake, who was on the opposite side of Kurosaki Ichigo and others. Therefore, Kurosaki Isshin and others instinctively doubted whether Kurosaki Makoto was real or not. When Senju Makoto heard this, he frowned slightly and looked in the direction of the fierce battle. The next moment, in the eyes of Kurosaki Isshin and others, Senju Makoto clasped his hands together, and countless dead trees suddenly emerged from the ground behind him and soared into the sky. The dead trees intertwined with each other and turned into two supergiant wooden palms in the blink of an eye and slapped Aizen Sosake in the direction of Aizen Sosake. Stark and Ulquiorra on both sides saw this and instinctively wanted to stop Senju Makoto's actions. Get out! Senju Makoto shouted, and wooden palms appeared in front of Stark and Ulquiorra, and they were slapped away as vast old level arances in an instant with lightning speed. This was a crushing scene. Compared with the abyss-like desperate pressure generated by these vast old level arances, Ishidori and Katatatara could not help but feel like they were in a dream. Even Kurosaki Ichigo could not help but think and compare instinctively, even if he was in the last crescent moon sky strike state, what were his chances of winning if he faced Vice Captain Makoto Senju head-on? He could not win. Soon, Kurosaki Ichigo came to a conclusion in his heart. Even if he was in the last crescent moon sky strike state and could compete with Vice Captain Makoto Senju, as long as he delayed a little, he would definitely not have the possibility of winning. And in this instant, the two supergiant wooden palms slammed down on Aizen Sosake, who was about to approach Kurosaki Makoto's position, forcing Aizen Sosake to retreat at an incredible speed. Moreover, this also gave Kurosaki Makoto the opportunity to distance himself again. For a time, in the minds of Kurosaki Ichigo and others, the situation was completely reversed, and they returned to heaven from the abyss of despair. Aizen Sosake's expression seemed to have changed from the previous arrogant and calm to a rather ugly one. He stared at Senju Makoto and said, "Makoto, you are so brave that you dare to break into the Hunya Palace alone. Aren't you afraid that I will take the opportunity to run to the Soul Society and kill people?" Senju Makoto felt a little helpless that Aizen Sosake still kept this address. Aizen Sosake, the mentality and thinking of treating yourself and others are really different. Obviously, it would be more perfect to address him more unfamiliarly at this moment, but it seems that there is some kind of obsession, and it seems that he is disdainful to cover up or show off something, and he still keeps the address of Makoto. Of course, Aizen Sosake's image in the eyes of the world now will not be inconsistent with speaking like this, but Senju Makoto, who is upright and represents the justice of the Seireitei, naturally cannot keep that kind of intimate address on the surface. Aizen, Senju Makoto said with sharp eyes and a tit-for-tat aura. Without a complete confirmation that you are in the Palace of the Night, I will not take risks. As Senju Makoto's voice fell, Kurosaki Ichigo felt that the kidney rope in his hand suddenly broke free and flew quickly in the direction of Senju Makoto, and then landed in Senju Makoto's palm. Then, the white light emitted by the kitten rope slowly dissipated, and finally turned into several green grasses in Senju Makoto's hand. Although it is a pity that Ichigo could not use the seal I prepared for you, it also has the special function of positioning and synchronizing sound. Aizen, you are very smart and terrible. Your grasp of human nature is unmatched. All kinds of invisible psychological games have played the entire 13th Division in the palm of your hand. But when the flaw is revealed, it is often the moment to test the opponent. When he said this, Senju Makoto suddenly burst out with a materialized green spiritual pressure that soared into the sky, making Kurosaki Ishin and others even feel suffocated and dizzy. If you had been hiding in the Kainiac, I wouldn't have dared to leave the Seireitei rashly. But now, it seems that it's time to continue the battle that has not yet been completely decided. Aizen, this is where you're eternally sealed. However, Aizen Sasuke suddenly laughed. Ha 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 ha. Senju Makoto's face flashed a trace of astonishment, and his tone sank as he asked. Aizen, what are you laughing at? Aizen Sasuke stopped laughing and asked. No, I'm just a little curious if Makoto-kun has forgotten his profession. There is no point in delaying time, Aizen. On the contrary, the more time you delay, the more advantageous it will be for me. Senju Makoto said. Suddenly, in the eyes of Kurosaki Ichigo and others, Aizen Sasuke's face had a strange smile. Makoto-kun, have you really decided to watch Kurosaki Masaki completely become hollow in order to attack me? End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.